Lin Feng was back on the head of the gigantic purple dragon and his eyes were closed as before. Besides, the purple dragon, on which Lin Feng was moving towards the people of the dream pavilion, which made their heartbeats accelerate violently. Lin Feng was back on the head of the gigantic purple dragon and his eyes were closed as before. Besides, the purple dragon, on which Lin Feng was moving towards the people of the dream pavilion, which made their heartbeats accelerate violently. "How dare you?" said the woman, who sounded enraged. She was extremely arrogant, and at that moment, she was still acting very haughty and bossy. "Why would I not dare?" said Lin Feng, sounding ice cold. "Mr. Hua, Meng Qing, Aunt Yun is for you." "All right," said Mr. Hua while slightly nodding. He was staring at Aunt Yun. How arrogant. She was even looking down on him, an old man at the same Xian Qi layer. The purple dragon arrived in front of the people of the dream pavilion in a flash. At that moment, a silhouette blocked Lin Feng's way. It was Lan Jiao. "Please, no," said Lan Jiao while shaking her head and hoping that Lin Feng would stop. "Please, no," said the gigantic dragon, sounding ice cold. "Your people, the people of the dream pavilion, want to kill me, but I can't kill them. Besides, when they wanted to kill me, you didn't try to prevent them from doing so, but now that I want to kill them, do you think that you have any right to stop me?" When Lan Jiao heard Lin Feng, she started shaking. Indeed, when these people arrived to kill Lin Feng, she didn't try to stop them. What gave her the right to try and prevent Lin Feng from getting his revenge by blocking his way? Get lost. The gigantic dragon moved forwards and threw Lan Jiao's body flying to the side. Then, it kept moving forwards towards the people of the dream pavilion. Immediately after, horrible shrieks spread through the atmosphere. All the people of the dream pavilion were thrown into the air. An extreme strength had smashed into them, destroying their bones, flesh and vital organs. SSSS, the dragon had slaughtered the people of the dream pavilion, but its two gigantic eyes revealed neither sympathy nor pity, they were just filled with killing intent. It fought until all the enemies were dead. At the moment when everybody wanted to kill him, who had felt any sympathy or pity for him? The world of cultivation was a cruel world without emotion. Those who were weak in their hearts died early. The rule was to kill or be killed. Very quickly, a sea of corpses appeared in front of the purple dragon. All the people of the dream pavilion except for Lan Jiao had died. Far in the distance, Aunt Yun's facial expression looked evilly cold, revealing her murderous desires. All of her people had died except for Lan Jiao. She had to get revenge and kill Lin Feng. However, at that moment, Meng Qing and Mr. Hua were preventing her from doing so, she couldn't even move closer to Lin Feng. Besides, Mo Conglan and Bing Hiteng were smiling coldly. They both had ice-cold evil smiles on their faces. They hadn't expected such happy circumstances. For them, the more devastating that battle was, the more advantageous it was for them. The gigantic purple dragon slowly turned around. Its eyes looked as cold as before and it glanced at the crowd. The crowd looked at Lin Feng, but what they didn't know was that Lin Feng, at that moment, was exhausted and had almost no strength remaining. Using the ode to the spirit, was using the strength of his soul to boost his spirit's power, and then make his spirit transform into a ferocious dragon. It was extremely tiresome for his soul and vitality. Lin Feng already had the impression that he was about to faint from exhaustion. Mo Conglan had a huge smile on his face. He was slowly walking forward, taking small steps. Suddenly, he jumped into the air, throwing himself at Lin Feng. An endless quantity of vines appeared in the air and moved towards Lin Feng at full speed. Even though that purple dragon was terrifying, Mo Conglan had sensed that the purple dragon was just Lin Feng's spirit and that it wasn't a real dragon. Besides, it only had the strength of the first Xian Qi layer, but that was still sufficient to kill 4 people of the first Xian Qi layer. However, it wouldn't be enough against Mo Conglan. In such circumstances, if Emo Songlan managed to kill Lin Feng, the purple dragon would collapse by itself. SSSSSS. The dragon moved towards the vines. The vines were becoming longer and started twining around the dragon's body. A bloodthirsty chi emerged from the vines and the purple dragon was finally defeated. It transformed into a purple lake and rushed back towards Lin Feng's body. Lin Feng couldn't endure it anymore, he was too exhausted. He fell down onto the ground and opened his eyes. He saw these bloodthirsty vines coming towards him, at the same time, an ice-cold chi enveloped his body. Emo Songlan and Bing Hiteng were attacking Lin Feng together. They wanted to kill him and steal the cauldron. "You plan to kill me?" said Lin Feng, smiling with a warm smile on his face. He didn't feel threatened at all. His body flickered, a light flashed, and suddenly, an ancient cauldron appeared in Lin Feng's hand. It contained a mysterious, ancient chi. When the ancient cauldron appeared, everybody was stupefied. At that moment, Lin Feng had taken out the ancient cauldron. It was obviously the heavenly dragon cauldron. The crowd, who had no hope of ever being able to touch the cauldron, was still very excited when it appeared, and had hope again. What if a miracle happened and they were able to get it? "You all want the heavenly dragon cauldron? Here, you can have it," shouted Lin Feng furiously. Immediately, the heavenly dragon cauldron flew through the air towards Emo Songlan. Lin Feng was offering it to him. Emo Songlan was astonished. His vines stopped moving towards Lin Feng. Instead, he used them to catch the cauldron. Immediately after, he vigorously pulled it towards him. In a flash, it was almost in Emo Songlan's hands. Bing Hiteng released some ice energy and threw himself at Emo Songlan. At that moment, he had already forgotten about Lin Feng. Even though Lin Feng had killed his disciples of the Ice and Snow Mountain Village, they were less important than that ancient cauldron. If he managed to get that ancient cauldron, he would leave Shuiyu and go to even greater and more important places. How could Bing Hiteng miss the opportunity to get the ancient cauldron? He wasn't the only one to think that way. Because of Lin Feng, Protector Kong had killed Emo Xia, Emo Songlan's son, and Emo Songlan hated Lin Feng even more for that, but just before, when Emo Songlan obtained the cauldron, he immediately focused on storing the cauldron and started running away at an incredible speed. People couldn't even believe their eyes. He didn't think that it would be that easy to acquire the heavenly dragon cauldron. Emo Songlan, at that moment, couldn't help but look up at the sky and feel overjoyed. He hadn't killed Lin Feng yet, but after getting monstrously strong, he would come back and easily be able to kill Lin Feng. He didn't need to rush. The most important thing was to stay safe and leave with the cauldron. "Where are you going?" shouted Aunt Yun furiously. She jumped into the air and threw herself at Emo Songlan, forgetting about Lin Feng for the time being. At that moment, Meng Qing and Mr. Hua didn't stop them. They instead moved back to Lin Feng's side. They were looking at the people who were farther and farther away. "It's not that easy to obtain the heavenly dragon cauldron," said Mr. Hua indifferently. Mr. Hua's eyes were filled with admiration while looking at Lin Feng. Lin Feng, when he was threatened by the people of the Dream Pavilion, hadn't taken the ancient cauldron out, but when the situation had turned out to be really dangerous, he immediately threw away an incredibly precious treasure, without regret or hesitation. Courage, insight, cunning and resolution, coupled with Lin Feng's natural talent, would definitely turn him into an incredibly strong cultivator. Lin Feng's face turned deathly pale. He was smiling indifferently and took out a sheet, a pill recipe. "Mr. Hua, this is the recipe for spirit blood pills. Keep it safe. I will copy some other recipes for you," said Lin Feng while giving the recipe to Mr. Hua. If he hadn't been helped by Mr. Hua, maybe the outcome of these battles would have been different. He wouldn't even have been able to resist to Emo Songlan and Bing Hiteng. Lin Feng would remember that favor forever. Mr. Hua looked delighted. Without adhering to formalities with Lin Feng, he immediately put away the recipe and immediately handed a ring to Lin Feng while saying, "These are the things that you have asked me to get. Keep them safe." "Thank you," said Lin Feng while taking the ring. He immediately said, "Mr. Hua, how advanced is your knowledge when it comes to pills?" "So. I have no problem concocting Ling-level pills. I can make some Xian-level pills of lower quality as well, but it doesn't always succeed. I have about a 10% success rate. I am unable to make pills of higher levels." Xian-level pills of lower quality, 10% success rate. Mr. Hua's abilities when it came to concocting pills were already extremely advanced. Having a 10% success rate when it came to concocting Xian-level pills of lower quality was not a great success rate, but it was very high compared to others, which was why the demand for Xian-level pills were high. Mr. Hua certainly had many people who were interested in his services. "Mr. Hua, are you interested in concocting some pills with me? You could also teach a few things about pills," asked Lin Feng. Mr. Hua remained silent for a while and then said, while smiling, "Concocting pills together, no problem, but don't you want to chase the heavenly dragon cauldron? I'm not strong enough to own such a valuable item, how could I even get it back?" said Lin Feng while shaking his head and smiling. "If you cannot get it back, at least, you should make things hard for them." These days, the news that the heavenly dragon cauldron is in Celestial River will spread very quickly. If anyone wants it, it will not be easy for anyone, at least, for a certain period of time. In Celestial River, it will be a bloodbath because of the ancient cauldron. Even though, relying on your own strength, you are not necessarily able to take it back, since you have pill recipes, I could ask some old friends to help, then it might not be that difficult to get it back," said Mr. Hua while smiling. Lin Feng looked delighted. Since the precious treasure was there, many extremely strong people were going to try and steal it. The strongest ones could defeat a few of their opponents, but it wouldn't be an easy task to exterminate all those interested in the cauldron. In a secret room, Lin Feng was sitting cross-legged and his eyes were firmly closed. Carefree and indifferent, Lin Feng was fused with the earth. In a secret room, Lin Feng was sitting cross-legged and his eyes were firmly closed. Carefree and indifferent, Lin Feng was fused with the earth. A long thread of pure qi was fluctuating, it contained Lin Feng's soul energy. Lin Feng was practicing his surplus souls technique. It had been 2 days since the battle between the multiple groups. During these 2 days, Lin Feng had only been sitting in that secret room practicing cultivation, nothing else. His pure qi had recovered, the strength of his soul had also recovered, at the same time, he had improved the speed of his surplus soul ability. The strength of his soul was becoming stronger and stronger. He was also able to make even more surplus souls appear. He could make an even stronger purple spirit appear. In a battle, he would be much stronger than before. Lin Feng needed to be extremely strong. Therefore, before even having completely recovered from his injuries, Lin Feng had already started developing the number of his surplus souls. In order to become stronger, even if it was extremely difficult, Lin Feng was ready and willing to endure the pain and suffering required. He didn't want to be threatened by other people. He didn't want to rely on Meng Qing and other people each time a situation appeared where someone wanted to kill him. It was embarrassing for Lin Feng to be so weak. The fact that Meng Qing protected him once in a while was not a problem, but it couldn't always be the case. Time passed and the 3rd day was already over. In that secret room, many purity stones of medium quality had already disappeared, but Lin Feng's ability to absorb pure qi was growing stronger. A white light was fluctuating in the atmosphere emitting whistling sounds. It was violently penetrating into Lin Feng's body. Lin Feng had the impression that he was intoxicated, it was so comfortable. The pure qi was revolving faster and faster around Lin Feng. Lin Feng's body was glittering and looked translucent. In the middle of the dazzling light, there was an incredible strength which seemed to be endless. It was the strength of pure qi, even though they were only small threads of pure qi, the fact that he was now absorbing enough pure qi for it to be visible implied that Lin Feng was getting closer and closer to reaching the Xian qi layer. Boom! A soft explosion emerged inside Lin Feng's body. An endless supply of pure qi drowned into Lin Feng's body from heaven and earth. Besides, at the same time, a thread of pure qi emitted a bright and dazzling light and then immediately vanished. Phew! Lin Feng, whose eyes were closed, slightly opened his mouth and took a deep breath. He opened his eyes and looked so delighted that his eyes were twinkling. 9th Ling Qi layer. I still have one more step before I break through to the Xian qi layer, now it's only a small step away. Thought Lin Feng. For months, Lin Feng had dedicated all his time to studying the Zun qi layer cultivator's memories and techniques. He had not reached the 9th Ling qi layer as he was focusing on the pure qi and techniques rather than just absorbing qi. After the last big battle, he finally believed he now had enough understanding of pure qi and could successfully advance. He had finally broken through to the 9th Ling qi layer, but was still a small step away from breaking through to the Xian qi layer. Even though Lin Feng had broken through to the 9th qi layer, he didn't stand up. He slowly closed his eyes again and kept practicing his surplus soul technique. Lin Feng couldn't afford to relax and be lazy. No matter how tiresome, how painful, everything that he did was in accordance with his beliefs. Everything he did was because of his incredible ambition, to not get bullied anymore, and to put a stop to the people who wanted to kill him. Lin Feng spent 7 days in the secret room focusing on getting stronger. Outside of the secret room was a spacious guest room, but nobody was inside at that moment. In the room next to Lin Feng's cultivation room, it was dark. From outside, that cultivation room looked like a shelf, but nobody knew that it was actually an entrance to a secret room. Meng Qing was probably cultivating as well. After all, that big battle had made her exhausted as well. Where is Mr. Hua? Thought Lin Feng. He started walking to the guest room and opened the door and entered. Inside, it was a scenery filled with charm and beauty. There were many rooms. In one of the rooms, a vast and boundless heat had invaded the atmosphere. Apart from that heat, it also smelt like medicine. No, it's not correct. Mr. Qi, that's not correct, the 1,000 lotus flower leaves have to melt first and then they can be put into the mixture. Then, we have to use our soul to control it. The sounds of people arguing could be heard in the room where the heat came from. It was precisely Mr. Hua's voice. It seemed like he was arguing with someone else about something. Mr. Hua, you are wrong. If you first melt the lotus leaves and then put them into the mixture, you will lose half of the medicinal strength when you add them to the mixture, and it will be impossible to concoct Xian-level spirit blood pills. Said the other voice. It seemed like that person was an old man like Mr. Hua. Besides, his voice sounded like he was stubbornly persisting in his own opinion. It seems like Mr. Hua and his friend were concocting Xian-level spirit blood pills, and that they didn't agree with each other, thought Lin Feng. Immediately after, he entered the room in which they were concocting pills. Apart from Mr. Hua, Lin Feng saw another old man. He was sitting down on a chair. Both of them were staring at the other. It seemed like they were unable to persuade each other. Besides, next to them was a huge cauldron. Mr. Hua had taken the recipe of the spirit blood pills and was discussing it with the other old man. Obviously, they were very well acquainted. Lin Feng glanced at the two old men and then looked at the red-haired old man. His heart started beating a bit faster. He recognized the old man who was with Mr. Hua. It was the old man who bid on the heavenly dragon cauldron in the auction room but who, in the end, let Lin Feng get it. The red-haired old man, when he saw Lin Feng, smiled and nodded. "Senior," said Lin Feng while slightly bowing, as a sign of respect. "Lin Feng, you provided us with the recipe of the spirit blood pills. We need you to tell us, do we have to make the lotus leaves melt first and then add them to the mixture or not?" asked Mr. Hua. He was only concerned about his argument with the red-haired old man. "Stop talking nonsense. If you melt them first and add them to mixture, would your soul be strong enough to control the leaves so that their essence spreads evenly in the concoction? If the pills are not perfectly balanced with all the ingredients, can you still concoct Xian-level spirit blood pills? Said the red-haired old man, getting angry again. When Lin Feng saw these two old men argue, he smiled. In that world, being able to exchange ideas while insulting each other, but remaining friendly was also an enviable thing. It could mean that a friendship had already reached a certain degree. Mr. Hua, Sr., I also did some research about that recipe, but my pill concoction abilities are extremely basic. I'm not able to concoct spirit blood pills, but I would like to have a try with the guidance from you, my seniors. We could see if Mr. Hua's suggestion works, even if there is no guarantee that it will work. Said Lin Feng, who made the red-haired old man frown. Lin Feng, who are you calling a senior? Call me Mr. Qi, damn it. Maybe because you have never concocted pills before, but the more people doesn't mean the merrier, it's actually the opposite and can get chaotic. People synchronize their souls in perfect harmony. Concocting pills is an extremely rigorous process, each step of the procedure is of highest importance. One careless move and the whole thing would be lost. Besides, it can lead to the cauldron being damaged or destroyed. Said the red-haired old man, sounding solemn and respectful. One person was more appropriate than two when concocting pills. I know about that, obviously, but maybe I have a solution. Said Lin Feng while smiling. Immediately after, he sat next to Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi, in front of the cauldron. You are two senior alchemists, you can feel the strength of a soul. Said Lin Feng. Immediately after, he closed his eyes. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi glanced at each other and then immediately closed their eyes. They then all started releasing the strength of their soul and slowly let it flow out. In a flash, Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi could feel the strength of each other's souls. It seemed like there were two sets of eyes angrily staring at each other. Their souls were in the atmosphere, but their souls were at odds. Every person was unique and would see things in their own way. It was impossible for two people to have perfectly identical beliefs and opinions, which was why it was difficult for several people to concoct pills together. However, at that moment, an illusion slowly appeared. It was Lin Feng's soul. That bright illusion immediately wrapped up the two old men's souls, and in a flash, it seemed like their souls had entered another world. These three people's souls seemed to be following the same pace and rhythm as if they were joined through a special connection. The bright illusion moved their soul power into the cauldron. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi could distinctly and clearly perceive what Lin Feng's soul was doing as if it was their own soul. It was a mysterious and mystical moment. At that moment, the light vanished from the atmosphere. That mysterious sensation vanished as well. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi's souls suddenly became at odds again. They recalled their souls back into their bodies and opened their eyes. They were both looking at Lin Feng. They looked delighted. Earth fusion. Indeed, I have broken through the earth dimension. Said Lin Feng while nodding. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi remained silent for a while and then both burst into an insane laughter. Mr. Hua, the fact that you have met Lin Feng is a stroke of luck. He knows the secret of earth fusion which even we could only dream of. Thanks to him, we can concoct at the same time, while maintaining the efficiency to a high level. Said Mr. Qi while smiling. Before, it was impossible for Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi to concoct pills together, but since Lin Feng had the power of earth fusion, they would be able to concoct pills together and their souls could work together. They could clearly divide the work without interfering with the other. This made the chance of errors occurring very low. As alchemists, Lin Feng didn't need to beg them to accept working with him. It was a great chance for them to increase their knowledge and abilities by working together. At that moment, Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi were not arguing anymore. Mr. Hua nodded, smiled then said, "It's a strike of luck indeed. Lin Feng has only been practicing cultivation for less than a decade. Yet he can already fuse with the earth. He can also defeat cultivators of the Xian Qi layer even though he only had the power of the 8th Ling Qi layer. In fact, I particularly look forward to seeing how strong and powerful he will be in the future. At that moment, Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi were not arguing anymore. Mr. Hua nodded, smiled, then said, "It's a strike of luck indeed. Lin Feng has only been practicing cultivation for less than a decade. Yet he can already fuse with the earth. He can also defeat cultivators of the Xian Qi layer even though he only had the power of the 8th Ling Qi layer. In fact, I particularly look forward to seeing how strong and powerful he will be in the future." "Yes," said Mr. Qi while nodding. Mr. Hua had already told him about all the things which had happened in Celestial River. Lin Feng had been at the core of all these incidents. Lin Feng's natural talent was rare. The so-called geniuses of the biggest sects couldn't rival Lin Feng. Such geniuses as Lin Feng maybe appeared once every millennium. If they didn't die young, they usually reached the heavens. Mr. Qi looked impatient to see an authentic genius grow up. That would indubitably be very exciting. Lin Feng slightly smiled while shaking his head. He indeed had a high natural talent, but for the time being, he wasn't strong enough. There were so many people who were much stronger than him. He needed to be monstrously strong. If someday, he managed to reach the heavens and walked above the clouds while looking down at all living creatures, what a mighty and epic moment would that be. "Mr. Hua, Mr. Qi, let's refine some Xian-level spirit blood pills together. We'll first start heating the cauldron," said Lin Feng. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi looked delighted. They both looked forward to concocting some pills altogether, the three of them. Refining some Xian-level pills of medium quality was extremely complex. Even though Mr. Qi and Mr. Hua had been arguing, they also didn't really intend to refine Xian-level pills of medium quality. But Lin Feng had opened their eyes and it was like a ray of sunshine through the clouds. It seemed like nothing was impossible. If Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi had concocted pills, they would only have been able to concoct Xian-level pills of lower quality, but since the earth fusion enabled them to be in symbiosis, the level of the pills could be increased significantly. They were, of course, willing to give it a try. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi turned Lin Feng. "Is everything ready?" asked Lin Feng. Immediately after, the two old men nodded. Lin Feng closed his eyes and entered in the mysterious dimension which enabled him to fuse with the earth. The strength of his soul emerged and invaded the entire atmosphere. That strength wrapped up the strength of the two old men's souls and immediately after moved into the cauldron. A fireball appeared and embraced the cauldron, boiling the spiritual herbs which were inside. "Fiery herbs," said Mr. Hua, sounding indifferent. Mr. Qi understood what that meant and then his body faintly shook and then some pure Qi strength moved into the cauldron, breaking apart the fiery herbs and evenly spreading them in the concoction. At that moment, Lin Feng was responsible for making sure that their souls remained on the same wavelength. Mr. Hua was in charge of maintaining the fire while Mr. Qi was in charge of the concoction. Every single step had to be carried out rigorously. The smell of the pills slowly started invading the entire atmosphere. The odor around the cauldron was getting more and more intense. "Sanguine flames," said Mr. Hua after a while in a low voice. Mr. Qi had already prepared everything. A long blood-red thread spread in the air and moved into the cauldron. "1,000 lotus leaves," shouted Mr. Hua. Immediately after, 1,000 lotus leaves moved towards the cauldron. The 1,000 lotus leaves couldn't be cooked at the same speed though because of the fire. "I will help you," said Mr. Qi in a low voice. His incredibly strong soul came to wrap up the leaves and disperse them evenly and above the fire, enabling them to gradually melt into the sanguine flames. That part was very difficult but was crucial as well. At that moment, Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi were anxiously frowning. They released the entire strength of their souls, which made cold sweat unceasingly drip from their bodies. It was consuming all of their soul strength and pushing them to the limit. At that moment, the lotus leaves were starting to slide to the side. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi started shaking. Had they failed? At that moment, the Great Soul, which had been wrapping up theirs, disappeared as well. In a flash, the wonderful feeling, which had invaded their hearts before, disappeared. Hopelessness replaced their positive feelings. Their strength wasn't sufficient to refine Xian-level pills of medium quality. They didn't control the strength of their soul with enough mastery. Maybe after breaking through to the fourth Xian-Qi layer, they would be able to achieve their aim. The strength of their souls had already come out of the cauldron, however, at that moment, the strength of a soul kept moving into the cauldron. It wrapped up the 1,000 lotus leaves and put them into the sanguine flames. A bright and resplendent red light emerged in the atmosphere. It almost looked like the lotus leaves were about to blossom. It was splendid. It's Lin Feng, he hasn't given up. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi's hearts were pounding. They released the strength of their soul once again. One took control of the spiritual herbs and the other took control of the temperature control. After a brief moment, all the spiritual herbs had melted. At that moment, bright red lotus flowers had appeared on the lotus leaves. It was absolutely gorgeous. "Close!" shouted Mr. Hua. The lotus flowers slowly closed themselves. Immediately after, the fire lost in intensity. The smell of the pills was getting stronger and stronger. A bright and resplendent red light was illuminating the atmosphere and kept revolving above the mouth of the cauldron. "Mr. Qi!" shouted Mr. Hua. He then yelled again, his voice was making the atmosphere vibrate, "Finish the pill." Boom! A bright and resplendent red light burst from the cauldron. Mr. Qi had anticipated this already. He jumped up in the air, breaking through the ceiling, abruptly raised his hand and grabbed something within the red light. He immediately came back down and opened the palm of his hand. Amazingly, a small oval object appeared. It was illuminated by a red light which kept fluttering around it. "It's finished. It's a success." The three of them suddenly looked truly excited. They had worked together relying on three very strong cultivators' strength. They had all poured endless effort into this process and become closer because of it. It sounded simple, but concocting Xian-level spirit blood pills had sucked up a lot of their energy. Besides, at that moment, Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi felt like he was going to collapse. Mr. Hua, this time, Lin Feng is the one who has used the most strength to concoct that Xian-level spirit blood pill. He is also the one who has provided us with the recipe. Finally, at the most crucial moment, he is also the one saved the situation. If he hadn't been there, we wouldn't have been able to refine that spirit blood pill. Therefore, it belongs to Lin Feng. What do you think?" said Mr. Qi. They had only prepared the ingredients to concoct the pill. Besides, obtaining one pill was already an exceptional success for them, let alone making more. "I, of course, have no objection to that. The pill belongs to Lin Feng," said Mr. Hua while smiling and nodding. When Lin Feng heard them, a warm feeling invaded his heart. In the continent, there were many evildoers who constantly plotted against other people, but there were also many people who were very kind and who were honest and sincere to others. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi belonged to the second category of people. That pill was Xian-level spirit blood pill of medium quality. It would have been incredibly useful to them, particularly if it helped them advance before a potentially fatal battle, but they preferred giving it to Lin Feng. Of course, it was because they were very honest. Besides, Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi were very good friends already and neither would disagree. Lin Feng smiled and shook his head, "Mr. Hua, Mr. Qi. The three of us being together to concoct the pills was absolutely essential. This is the result of our teamwork and it is a success for us as a group. Nobody has more merit than the other. As far as the pill recipe is concerned, I had already promised it to Mr. Hua, so it doesn't count. Therefore, it is not my recipe and the pill does not belong to me." Lin Feng refused to take the spirit blood pill. If he wanted to kill people, he used his sword. But if people were kind to him, he was happy to make friends with them. No, in terms of strength, that pill is very beneficial to you, said Mr. Hua while shaking his head. Mr. Hua, that pill would be very beneficial to me, however it would be better if one of you took it. With my current strength, taking the pill would be a waste. I would not be able to absorb the full power of the pill. It would be better if one of you took it. If you become stronger, that will also help me. Lin Feng once more declined the two old men's offer. Actually, Lin Feng was just stating facts. A cultivator of the Ling Qi layer taking a Xian-level pill of medium quality was a waste, he would not be able to absorb even half of its power. Mr. Hua, you can take the pill, said Mr. Qi, not trying to convince Lin Feng anymore. Instead, he was giving it to Mr. Hua. But Mr. Hua also shook his head and said, "Old friend, even though you are not as good as me at concocting pills, you are still stronger than me. This pill is for you, it would be more appropriate for you to take it." Stop talking nonsense. Since when am I not as good as you at concocting pills? Said Mr. Qi angrily. If you're not taking it, you can try to give it to Lin Feng again, said Mr. Hua with a disdainful expression on his face which made Lin Feng smile wryly. How come these two were talking about concocting ability again? I don't know, but, Mr. Hua, Mr. Qi, that pill must be taken as soon as possible for maximum potency. It doesn't matter if you are not interested. When Lin Feng finished talking, he immediately made an eat gesture to them by placing his fingers to his mouth. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi looked at each other and both immediately burst into a fit of laughter, at the same time. After Lin Feng had left, Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi remained in the room where they were concocting the pills. After Lin Feng had left, Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi remained in the room where they were concocting the pills. Old friend, seriously, you are younger than me, yet your cultivation level is higher than mine. You are already at the peak of the third Xian Qi layer and your natural talent is extremely high. These spirit blood pills increase the strength of the blood vessels and make the soul much stronger. If you take it, you would have high chance of breaking through to the fourth Xian Qi layer. Even in a city as vast as Celestial River, we would still have absolute power. Mr. Hua was looking at Mr. Qi in a solemn and respectful way. Therefore, old friend, we shouldn't fight again. Mr. Qi was a bit surprised. He remained silent for a moment and finally nodded while saying, "All right. Old friend, don't be so serious. In the future, with Lin Feng's natural talent and the earth fusion, we will have even more good pills. Do you think that I will not take any in the future?" Huh? Mr. Qi was a bit surprised. He was staring at Mr. Hua and said, "What you mean is?" Mr. Hua slightly nodded and said, "You guessed right, I am getting ready to follow Lin Feng." Follow Lin Feng? Mr. Qi's pupils shrank. Lin Feng had broken through to the 8th Ling Qi layer, but Mr. Hua was a strong cultivator of the 3rd Xian Qi layer. Surprisingly, he wanted to follow Lin Feng. Indeed, follow Lin Feng, said Mr. Hua, sounding absolutely serious. He then said, sounding solemn and respectful, "Old friend, deep in your heart, you're also able to evaluate Lin Feng's ability to concoct pills." Mr. Qi frowned and then said while nodding, "Earth fusion, that exceptional soul strength and Lin Feng's level of talent, his destiny is to become a great alchemist." "You're wrong, old friend," said Mr. Hua while shaking his head. "I'm wrong." "Indeed, you are wrong. His earth fusion, his amazing soul strength, he's not only good for concocting pills. Lin Feng is extremely good at everything. Provided that he's willing to do something, he always manages to master it. He can become a monstrously strong cultivator. He can become an alchemist, a blacksmith, a commander, anything. He only has to be willing to do something and he'll be able to achieve it. If we are patient, we will see incredibly wonderful things happen." Mr. Hua was speaking slowly. Mr. Qi's eyes were twinkling. Indeed, with the earth fusion and his incredible soul strength, Lin Feng would be able to accomplish anything, only relying on his monstrous talent. Old friend, you have observed Lin Feng's behavior and ability with your own eyes, he is worth trusting. You know, we may be cultivators of the Xian Qi layer but we are not that young anymore. We might not be able to have any more breakthroughs in this lifetime. Our lifespan is not limitless. Nowadays, we have a certain reputation in Celestial River but it also has its limits and will eventually fade. Following Lin Feng will provide us with many new opportunities. When Mr. Qi heard Mr. Hua, he shivered. Indeed, ordinary people had a life expectancy of 100 years. For people of the Qi and Ling Qi layers, provided that they were strong and healthy, could usually hope to live until 150 years old. Besides, cultivators of the Xian Qi layer could to live to the age of 200 years old but that was the maximum. However, for those who could become amazingly strong cultivators, it was a different story, they could live until the age of 500 years old. Such cultivators could often reach the heavens on the path of cultivation after 300 years. Even though Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi had a prestigious status in Celestial River, but on the scale of the continent, they were nobodies. Besides, sooner or later, they would reach their limit then become weaker and they wouldn't have the opportunity to improve their cultivation anymore. Following someone strong and making them stronger is easy, but providing help when it is needed the most is difficult. Old friend, what Lin Feng needs now is assistance. If we follow him, he will be truly grateful. Besides, on the day when Lin Feng reaches the heavens, if you only want to help him become even greater at that moment, will he pay attention to you? Mr. Hua was speaking slowly, old friend, we cannot wait for Lin Feng to become extremely powerful to follow him, now, we have a great opportunity and it will enable us to obtain some power and influence too. We have the opportunity to follow a genius, isn't that formidable? Besides, if we follow Lin Feng, we might get the chance to become stronger cultivators and not have to worry about our lifespan. Wait for Lin Feng to be influential and then follow him. Whispered Mr. Qi. Could we really become stronger and no longer await our death? Alright, old friend, take your time to think about it. First, take a spirit blood pill to break through to the next layer. I will help you absorb it. Said Mr. Hua interrupting Mr. Qi's train of thought. Mr. Qi nodded and said, all right. When they finished talking, the two old men walked to the secret room. A month had passed, and Celestial River was going through some turbulent times. In the western part of Celestial River, there were some of the strongest cultivators of the Haoyu sect. In the northern part, there were some amazingly strong cultivators of the Ice and Snow Mountain Village, besides, there were even some extremely strong cultivators who had come from other distant places. For example, there were some extremely strong cultivators from the Luoxia sect, the Imperial City, the Wanshou sect, the Yu clan and the Imperial clan. All of these groups of people had sent people to Celestial River. Apart from these people, there were also some unknown people, whose influence was unknown. The entire city of Celestial River had been encircled. It was only possible to get into the city but leaving was impossible. No matter who, they couldn't take half a step outside of the ancient city of Celestial River. Everybody only had one goal, obtain the Heavenly Dragon Cauldron, one of the 10 legendary cauldrons. It was a treasure which dated back to the ancient times but nobody knew exactly how useful it was. But since it had become one of the 10 legendary cauldrons, it probably was an incredible treasure. That object didn't belong to the history of Xueyu but to the history of the continent of the 9 clouds. If some people in the continent knew that one of the 10 legendary cauldrons was in Celestial River, it would turn into a bloodbath. Apart from Xueyu cultivators, if people other countries learnt that the precious treasure was in Xueyu, they would also send forces to take it. At that moment, in Celestial River, in a thatched hut, there was a silhouette wearing a bamboo hat. That person was wearing ragged clothes and was sitting on the ground. Their head was hanging low. However, an evil light was flashing in the person's eyes. A bunch of bastards. said that person in an evil voice. The person's eyes were dark green and looked extremely cold. The person was the one who had obtained the heavenly dragon cauldron, Mo Tsanglan. After everything happened, he hadn't thought that the situation would turn out so difficult. After Mo Tsanglan obtained the ancient cauldron, his escape had been obstructed by a myriad of people who wanted to kill him. He wanted to rush out of Celestial River but he had nearly been killed. Later on, more and more strong cultivators had been gathering around the city. Mo Tsanglan had no possibility of escape, he was completely encircled. At that moment, he was severely injured. Even though he had been injured, he had also killed a certain number of his pursuers. These days, Mo Tsanglan was like a beggar who nobody wanted to be associated with. He was chased by a myriad of people who wanted to kill him. He was under extreme pressure. Mo Tsanglan was breathing heavily, pure qi was revolving around his body. His qi was unstable. During that short time, he swallowed an incredible quantity of pure qi but horrible things were progressively approaching him, it seemed like oblivion was awaiting. At that moment, Mo Tsanglan frowned, an evil expression flashed in his eyes. In the distance, some people were moving towards him. "Sister, there is a thatched hut there, let's go and rest there," said a girl. Immediately after, everybody started walking towards the hut. Mo Tsanglan was in corner, he was dispirited. A short moment after, 3 beautiful silhouettes entered the thatched hut. "Sister, look, there's somebody here, let's switch to another place," said the younger girl in a soft voice. "Why would we? Let's make him get the hell out of here," said the other one aggressively. Immediately after, she arrived on Mo Tsanglan's side and said, sounding ice-cold, "We belong to the Wuxia sect and need to have a rest. Leave and find another place to stay. Switch to another place," said Mo Tsanglan with a strange expression on his face. He slowly raised his head. His face was filled with an evil expression which made the 3 people shiver. Their facial expressions drastically changed. Slash, slash. Several vines appeared in the air, in a flash, the girl's body was constricted by the vines, which were sucking the blood and flesh from under her skin. Aw! A horrible shriek spread in the air. The 2 other people started running away but in a flash, another vine moved towards one of the girls and firmly wrapped around her body. "Don't kill me!" desperately shouted that girl. Immediately after, her body turned into a pile of skin and bones which hit the floor. 2 girls had already been killed. From the 3 girls, there was only one left. "Mo Tsanglan, surprisingly, you're here," said a cold voice. Immediately after, the thatched hut was completely frozen. Mo Tsanglan was shivering, he was unable to deal with the younger girl. Boom! An ice chi rushed into the thatched hut and Mo Tsanglan immediately tried to leave. "Mo Tsanglan, I've been chasing you for such a long time, you already want to escape?" said that ice-cold voice. Bing! He! Tang! When the young girl heard these incredibly evil shouts, she immediately sat down onto the ground. When she saw her 2 sisters' corpses, her body started shaking in grief. At that moment, a person entered the now empty thatched hut. The young girl slightly calmed down. She raised her head and looked at the silhouette who had just entered the thatched hut. That person was wearing a monstrous bronze mask. The girl was so terrified that her hands dug into the ground. She kept crawling backwards. The pair of eyes behind the bronze mask looked swift and fierce, ice-cold, but they didn't look at the young girl at all, as if the person was lost in thoughts. Mo Tsanglan and Bing He-teng are here, surprisingly. Besides, it seems like Mo Tsanglan still has the heavenly dragon cauldron. Bing He-teng has been chasing him, thought Ba Dao. That thatched hut wasn't far from the place where Lin Feng and him were staying. Mr. Hua's residence was very close to this place. He was walking near the thatched hut and had sensed the cold qi. He quickly approached and then he had immediately heard Mo Tsang shout Bing Heting's name. In the distance, another voice spread in the atmosphere which surprised Ba Dao and made him shiver. He jumped away, he didn't feel like creating more trouble. "Stay there," said an ice-cold voice. At the moment when Ba Dao was getting ready to leave the thatched hut, a violent energy oppressed his body. Then someone punched through the air and the energy transformed into a blade which bombarded the atmosphere. Extremely loud explosion sound spread through the atmosphere. The thatched was already wrecked. Ba Dao's body was completely oppressed and fell down onto the ground. There was a man in front of him who glanced at Ba Dao. It was a young man. Immediately after, he looked at the two corpses as well as the young girl sitting on the ground. "Your methods are cruel and evil," said the young man sounding ice-cold while releasing deadly qi. "I didn't kill them," said Ba Dao sounding cold and detached, but his interlocutor didn't pay attention to him and his deadly qi was becoming even denser. "Do you think that I would believe you?" said the young man sounding ice-cold. "You kill my two sister disciples and want to do evil things to my other sister disciple. I caught you red-handed and now you want to escape." "He didn't kill them," said the girl sitting on the ground while standing up. She looked at the young man in an ice-cold way. "Fellow disciples. A moment ago, her brother disciple was near the thatched hut. He should have noticed that her two sisters being killed, but at the moment when they shouted for help, he did not come to help. He had just arrived after Ba Dao entered the hut. That was her brother disciple, how ridiculous." The young man couldn't deal with the murderer so he wanted to use Ba Dao as a scapegoat. "Sister, don't worry, since I am here, you don't need to be afraid of being bullied. Besides, I will avenge our two sisters." Just as the young girl had guessed, that young man really wanted to make Ba Dao a scapegoat. If he and his sister came out safe and sound while the two others had been killed, how would he be able to explain why he hadn't stopped the murderer? Wouldn't he lose face? "Huh." Ba Dao frowned. That young girl guessed right, that young man intended to make him as a scapegoat. Was it that easy though? "Since you want to kill him, what can I do?" "But I know that he hasn't killed them," said the young girl looking disgusted. "You don't know how to differentiate good from bad," said the young man. His facial expression looked strict and rigid. He then added, "If you had been raped and killed by him, isn't revenge important?" "Wu Gang, you're really shameless." That young girl looked slightly pale and her face was distorted. At the same time, Ba Dao realized what was going on as well. That guy wanted to kill him. "Yun Shi, you are so naive. You're not prepared to accept some things, but I like you that way, you're so innocent. Unfortunately, the only thing we can have is a one-night stand, you are not wife material," said Wu Gang while smiling coldly. He had always been interested in Yun Shi but she had never been interested in him. Proud and ambitious as he was uncomfortable not getting what he wanted. However, he now had the opportunity to make his evil thoughts come to reality at that moment. When Yun Shi heard Wu Gang, her face turned deathly pale. He was really shameless. "Sister, don't worry, I will kill him first and then I will take care of you," said Wu Gang while smiling. Immediately after, he looked at Ba Dao in an ice-cold way, his eyes were filled with murderous intentions. Ba Dao remained silent. A light flashed and his moon-breaking blade appeared in his hand. A piercingly cold and extremely brutal energy emerged from the blade. "You're not weak, 7th Ling Qi layer in your weapon is a spiritual weapon of higher quality, however, as before, you have run into a dead end," said Wu Gang while smiling coldly. He was one of the most outstanding disciples of the Luoxia sect, he had broken through to the 9th Ling Qi layer. His silhouette flickered and he then took a huge step. A illusion on his side transformed into opaque rosy clouds which filled the atmosphere. It was endless, mysterious and unfathomable. It was the sunset cloud's skill. Slash! Shouted Ba Dao. Ba Dao's blade lacerated the air. It seemed like the atmosphere was being torn apart. After that, his blade fell down onto the opponent's attack. It seemed like the atmosphere was torn apart. After that, that blade lacerated the endless and mysterious energy. It felt like that blade was easily cutting through the energy, like his blade was cutting air. The sunset cloud's skill was a D-level skill. Sunset clouds emerged from the cultivator's palm. It was vast and boundless but very difficult to carry out. However, in case of success, it was a terrifying attack. Boom! The enemy's hand landed on Ba Dao's body, which made him groan in pain, and his body was projected backwards. That cultivator had broken through to the 9th Ling Qi layer and was close to the Xian Qi layer. He could already control a meager amount of pure Qi and was difficult to fight against. In Xueyu, the Luoxia sect doesn't have the greatest influence, but if anyone dares look down on my sect. Except for the 8 high officials of Xueyu, no matter who it is, I despise them. No need to say that it especially applies to such worthless and insignificant people such as you. Said Wu Gang, sounding arrogant. He was looking at Yun Shi while talking as if he had been talking to her, but she didn't care about him at all. How ridiculous. Is that so? Said a voice which echoed through the atmosphere. It was extremely distinct, yet nobody was visible. Wu Gang frowned and said coldly, "Show yourself." Ba Dao was smiling. Except for the 8 high officials, Wu Gang despised everybody else. Very quickly, Wu Gang was going to realize that he was a fool. You dare say such arrogant things, and now you don't even know the location of the person you are speaking down to. How ridiculous. Said Ba Dao coldly when he saw that Wu Gang looked so arrogant. Shut the hell up. It's probably a shameless liar just like you, just another shameless person. Said Wu Gang, sounding cold and detached, but when finished talking, his heart twitched. He abruptly turned his head around and a distorted expression appeared on his face. Someone had been standing directly behind him. That person had appeared in absolute silence. That person looked clear and had limpid eyes. That person was a bit younger than Wu Gang. He looked handsome as well. His face didn't contain the least bit of shamelessness. Who are you? Asked Wu Gang to Lin Feng coldly. He didn't recognize Lin Feng. Lin Feng gave a mysterious impression to Wu Gang. Lin Feng looked indifferent and carefree like a gentle breeze, as if Lin Feng was just an illusion on the wind. You despise everyone who looks down on your sect except for the 8 high officials. Since it's like that, there is no need to tell you anything. The only thing that you need to know is that we are enemies. That's enough. Lin Feng was smiling. A moment before, Wu Gang had said it himself, except for the 8 high officials, he despised everybody else. Even though I, Wu Gang, am very proud, is not willing to make an enemy of others without reason. If there is the possibility, I prefer making friends. Said Wu Gang. Wu Gang couldn't sense Lin Feng's presence, so he was feeling unsafe. How shameless. Cursed Yun Shi. Wu Gang was really shameless. She felt disgusted by him. He is my friend. You wanted to kill him a moment ago. Are we friends or enemies, you tell me? Said Lin Feng while smiling coldly and pointing at Ba Dao. Wu Gang enjoyed using his power to bully those weaker than him, while Lin Feng could do the same. I'm giving you face, don't be shameless. I am the second best core disciple of the Luoxia sect. What do you intend to do, acting so arrogantly in front of me? Wu Gang couldn't reply to Lin Feng's question, so he immediately became aggressive and announced his status. After mentioning the Luoxia sect, Lin Feng would definitely be afraid. I'm so scared. Said Lin Feng while smiling coldly. His silhouette flickered and he disappeared from his original position. When Lin Feng reappeared, he was within arm's reach of Wu Gang. Die! Furiously shouted Wu Gang. His sunset clouds attack appeared again. The atmosphere was illuminated by rosy clouds, it looked incredible. The attack was just as opaque and unfathomable as before. However, the endless rosy clouds were extremely distinct for Lin Feng, who was in fusion with the earth. He shook his finger, out of which sword energies emerged and whistled in the air. He immediately attacked Wu Gang with his finger. Psh! Ah! A horrible shriek spread in the atmosphere. Wu Gang's body was projected back of 10 meters. His facial expression looked glum. At that moment, in the middle of his palm, blood was pouring down. A moment before, Lin Feng's sword-like finger had immediately pierced the palm of his hand. What a terrifying sharpness! Except for the 8 high officials, you despise everybody else, as expected, you are a real genius, said Lin Feng while laughing disdainfully on the tone of a joke. When Yun Shi saw that Lin Feng had defeated Wu Gang's sunset clouds so easily and had even injured him, her beautiful eyes started twinkling. How strong! When Yun Shi saw that Lin Feng had defeated Wu Gang's sunset clouds so easily and had even injured him, her beautiful eyes started twinkling. How strong! Who the hell are you? Wu Gang's palm was bleeding. He was evilly staring at Lin Feng. To which sect did Lin Feng belong? Why had he never heard about him before? Even though he had just said that, except for the 8 high officials, he despised everybody, he was just exaggerating. His ego had made him say those words. But the disciples of the other sects who could rival him were actually very few. He was well aware that they were completely different from the person who was standing before him. You are Lin Feng. At that moment, Yun Shi asked in a low voice. Lin Feng's name was already famous in Celestial River. He was carefree and ruthless. He was 18 years old but had defeated Bing Yuan, the Blade Elder Ling Yu, and he had even killed 4 cultivators of the Xian Qi layer. At the Luoxia sect, many disciples were talking about Lin Feng. Yun Shi had already heard about him a few times, trying to imagine what Lin Feng looked like. She had imagined that Lin Feng was arrogant and rude, but the young man who was standing there in front of her looked handsome and delicate. However, his proud temperament reminded her of the rumors surrounding Lin Feng. Lin Feng looked at Yun Shi and smiled. He looked handsome. He slightly nodded at her. Lin Feng's smile made Yun Shi's heartbeat accelerate. He nodded, it's really Lin Feng. Since ancient times, beautiful women liked heroic men. At the Luoxia sect, many girls wanted to see Lin Feng, that powerful and elegant young man. At that moment, Lin Feng's smile had the same effect as a gentle breeze on Yun Shi's body. In comparison with Lin Feng, Wu Gang looked extremely ugly. He was far from being able to rival Lin Feng in looks. Lin Feng. Wu Gang was stupefied. When he heard that name, he suddenly looked terrified. Lin Feng was able to kill cultivators of the Xian Qi layer. Besides, he had killed Bing Yuan of the Ice and Snow Mountain village. Therefore, Lin Feng wouldn't hesitate for a moment when killing him, who belonged to the Luoxia sect. Lin Feng, there is a misunderstanding, said Wu Gang while smiling warmly. He suddenly forgot that he wanted to kill Lin Feng a moment before. His hand was even still bleeding from the wound. A misunderstanding? Said Lin Feng with a cold smile on the corner of his mouth. Ba Dao, is there a misunderstanding? He and the girls belong to the Luoxia sect. Mo Tsanglan killed the 2 other girls. He perfectly knows about that. Because he cannot defeat Mo Tsanglan, he used me as a scapegoat. Besides, from his previous words it is clear that he was definitely planning to rape and kill the remaining girl, and then accuse me of doing it. He perfectly knew everything from the beginning. There is no misunderstanding. Ba Dao's voice sounded ice-cold, which made Wu Gang's facial expression turn glum. It is really a misunderstanding. I didn't know that you were Lin Feng's friend, continued Wu Gang while smiling. So what? You don't think that it is shameful to come and use someone else as scapegoat? Now, I feel like killing you and that means I will kill you," said Lin Feng while smiling coldly. He then started walking slowly, which made Wu Gang's smile turn rigid. "Lin Feng, nothing has to be set in stone. You can give me some conditions to live. Besides, my sister disciple, Yun Shi, is pure and fresh. If you like her, you can play with her as you wish. What do you think?" Wu Gang was slowly stepping backwards. He didn't want to fight, his courage had already been crushed. He now knew Lin Feng's identity, he didn't dare to fight anymore. "You're so shameless," said Lin Feng, whose silhouette flickered just like an illusion. At that moment, Wu Gang's hand shook as well. An incredible quantity of poisonous qi invaded the atmosphere, which surprised Lin Feng, who immediately stopped. He raised his hand and the poisonous qi immediately dispersed. However, at that moment, Wu Gang suddenly grabbed Yun Shi and was staring at Lin Feng. "Lin Feng, look at my sister disciple, she is so fresh and pure. Besides, she likes you. Wouldn't it be a waste if she died?" Lin Feng was surprised. He hadn't thought that he was that kind of person. He had taken Yun Shi as a hostage to threaten Lin Feng. What did he intend to do? Yun Shi was also his fellow disciple. She wasn't Lin Feng's friend. However, Wu Gang was taking her as a hostage. Lin Feng was really startled. Yun Shi hadn't thought that Wu Gang would do such a thing either. What Wu Gang was doing was utterly illogical. However, Yun Shi was looking at Lin Feng with pleading eyes. She had already seen Mo Tsang Lan kill her two sister disciples, and then the ugly Wu Gang had shown himself. She felt hopeless, lonely and desperate. She wished someone would show her some sympathy and consideration. The daring young hero whom she had wished would come and save her had appeared. Besides, he was very handsome. That was like a ray of light in her heart. She had a strange sensation though, as if she had been floating through the air. She had the impression that her heart had become vast and boundless. Taking advantage of a woman who was lost in her heart was extremely easy. "How shameless," said Lin Feng coldly while looking at Wu Gang. "So what? Lin Feng, surely you can't stand seeing such a pure and beautiful flower fade? Look how delicate her skin is. She's just turned 17. Said Wu Gang, who ignored Lin Feng's words. He just kept talking. An ice-cold-looking blade suddenly pressed against Yun Shi's face. When Lin Feng saw the girl's pure and beautiful eyes, he felt like he couldn't leave her and had to do something, even though he didn't even know her. Hee. The power of a woman's beauty is impressive. Sister, don't you always talk about Lin Feng? Now, it seems that Lin Feng is also interested in you. Look how good he is to you. It seems like you two are a perfect match," said Wu Gang while slowly pulling back Yun Shi. Yun Shi had mixed feelings. Wu Gang was her fellow disciple and acted so shamelessly and evil. Wu Gang was using her life to threaten a stranger. Lin Feng and her didn't know each other, but Lin Feng wasn't going to attack Wu Gang to save her. She was in a difficult position. Far away in the distance, some silhouettes were moving towards the hut. When Lin Feng saw that there were some silhouettes flying through the sky, he frowned. Besides, Wu Gang looked delighted. His dagger suddenly disappeared. He kept dragging Yun Shi backwards. He shouted loudly, "The elders have arrived at the perfect time. Someone wants to kill us, the disciples of the Wuxia sect." These people who were coming precisely belonged to the Wuxia sect. In a flash, they arrived on Wu Gang's side. "Wu Gang, what's going on?" asked that person coldly while glancing at the corpses on the ground. "Elder, Lin Feng is a criminal and attacked me by surprise. He also killed some of our disciples. He also planned to rape Yun Shi, my fellow disciple. Luckily, I risked my life to protect her, preventing Lin Feng from attacking. I am lucky that you arrived at the critical moment, said Wu Gang, which made the people of the Luoxia sect coldly stare at Lin Feng. Elder, Wu Gang is shameless. The one who killed my 2 fellow disciples was someone else. Besides, the one who wanted to rape me is Wu Gang. He just took a dagger and put it against my face, threatening Lin Feng, said Yun Shi honestly. Wu Gang was way too shameless and trying to accuse others. Sister, I took you to threaten Lin Feng. What is the nature of your relationship with Lin Feng? I know that Lin Feng's words made you confused, but in front of the elders, you don't need to lie, said Wu Gang coldly. Yun Shi's face turned deathly pale, she was speechless. Yun Shi, stop causing trouble, said the great elder, sounding indifferent. Yun Shi was astonished. She looked at him and said, you don't believe me either. It's the truth, it was really Wu Gang who did all these things. Alright, shut up now, shouted the great elder. Yun Shi started shaking when she heard him. Besides, an indifferent smile appeared on Wu Gang's face at the same time. What a naive girl. Wu Gang was the genius of the Luoxia sect. He had been trained for many years in the sect. The elder had obviously witnessed what had happened but was turning a blind eye to the truth. Besides, she wasn't that important in the sect when compared with Wu Gang. Besides, elders, we all seniors, they didn't need to know any of the details. If there was a problem, they would always take Wu Gang's side and protect him. The great elder looked at Lin Feng with an ice-cold glare. Lin Feng, how audacious. You dared kill members of the Luoxia sect, said another elder coldly. Immediately after, several silhouettes flickered and the members of the Luoxia sect encircled Lin Feng. When Lin Feng saw these people, a cold expression appeared in his eyes. A moment before, Wu Gang had used him as a scapegoat, and now these people, because of Wu Gang's lies, wanted to kill him too. Lin Feng understood things much better than Yun Shi. How could he not understand the morally corrupt actions of these people? Nonetheless, was killing Lin Feng really that easy? Elders, you must all stop immediately, said Yun Shi while looking at the elders surrounding Lin Feng. She looked nervous and yelled, this really has nothing to do with Lin Feng. How can you all be so unfair? Elders, you must all stop immediately, said Yun Shi while looking at the elders surrounding Lin Feng. She looked nervous and yelled, this really has nothing to do with Lin Feng. How can you all be so unfair? Arg! Shut up! Yun Shi's body flew away and crashed into the ground. She raised her head and saw that she was struck by her own master. She felt extremely cold in her heart, cold to the extent that it was piercing to the bones. She devoted her life to the sect, rarely leaving it, to the extent that it had almost become her permanent home. She had little experience in the real world, therefore, there were many things which she didn't understand. In her heart, she had always had the feeling that the sect was a place where she would always be safe. But at that moment, her heart had been invaded with bitter feelings. She had just seen the true face of her sect. She had seen the coldness and cruelty of these people. That coldness was enough to make her feel hopeless. At that moment, Yun Shi's world had been crushed. The sect was no longer the same in her heart. She wasn't seeing any of the warmth, only desolate coldness. When she saw her master's cold and indifferent expression, she finally realized that that world wasn't as simple and pure as she thought. The people of the Luoxia sect weren't as kind and caring as she thought. A single teardrop slowly ran down her cheek. It was a tear of hopelessness. She had also realized that no matter what she said, no matter how loud she shouted, nobody would pay attention to her. When Lin Feng saw Yun Shi's teardrop, he sighed. Yun Shi was way too naive. She had never understood that there were evil people running her sect. That was the hypocrisy of the world. It wasn't about who was in the right or wrong, it was more about understanding the other party's real objective. Sister, because of a stranger you're now suffering, and you surprisingly dared humiliate an elder in front of everybody," said Wu Gang indifferently. Yun Shi looked at him in an ice-cold way. Everything was happening because of Wu Gang. He was such a disgusting person, but Wu Gang didn't care about her opinion. Wu Gang was just thinking that it would be a pity if he didn't have the opportunity to play with such a beautiful girl. "Elders, Lin Feng is a shameless enemy. Not only did he attack me by surprise, but he has also killed 2 of our disciples and fooled Yun Shi. He is a worthless and disgusting animal. He must die." Wu Gang turned around and smiled coldly, his face was filled with murderous intentions. "Indeed. That disgusting person must die. We must avenge our disciples," said another elder immediately. "Kill him. We'll definitely kill him," said all the elders consecutively as if they were judges giving Lin Feng the death sentence. In their eyes, Lin Feng's life was already in their hands. If they wanted to kill him, they could kill him. Amongst these elders of the Wuxia sect, 3 of them were at the first Xian Qi layer, 2 at the second Xian Qi layer and 1 at the third Xian Qi layer. In such circumstances, Lin Feng was unable to escape even if he grew wings. Extremely swift and fierce sword qi emerged and bombarded the atmosphere. At that moment, a purple light shot high into the sky above Lin Feng's head, making him look like a ferocious warrior. "What? He wants to fight?" The members of the Wuxia sect laughed coldly and joked, "He is a cultivator of the Ling Qi layer. Even if he relies on external factors to increase his cultivation abilities, how could he resist our elders? Yes, he just wants to die." A gigantic qi emerged in the atmosphere. The cultivators of the Ling Qi layer all moved back and only those of the Xian Qi layer continued surrounding Lin Feng. They had all heard about that day when Lin Feng had fought against the Dream Pavilion and that he had killed 4 cultivators of the Xian Qi layer. Even though they had only broken through to the first Xian Qi layer, they had probably been careless when dealing with him. At that moment, all the elders were surrounding Lin Feng. How could he resist? "You still want to kill him, does that mean that you don't believe me?" said Yun Shi in a quiet voice. Was it that they didn't believe her or that they chose to ignore her? They all knew the truth perfectly, but it was much easier for them to just kill Lin Feng and settle the matter. Yun Shi stood up and said to the elders, "Elders, I swear that my 2 fellow disciples were killed by an evil man whom we met when we went into the hut. He also wanted to kill me, but at that moment, someone, whose name apparently was Bing Hiteng, appeared, and then the man stopped paying attention to me. Then they both left. Wu Gang perfectly knows what happened, but he doesn't want to lose face. He wanted to find a scapegoat. He was planning to rape me and kill me, then blame the one in the bronze mask. Fortunately, Lin Feng appeared, but Wu Gang shamelessly captured me as a hostage and threatened Lin Feng, which is why Lin Feng didn't kill him. After that, all of you arrived. I would prefer death over living a lie. What a naive little girl. How foolish." All these people of the Wuxia sect were coldly staring at Yun Shi. "Get lost!" shouted a powerful voice that filled everyone's ears. It made Yun Shi's entire body shake. "If you try to prevent us from avenging our sect members, we will bury you here with them," shouted an incredibly aggressive voice which made Yun Shi's heart pound faster. She had lost all hope. It seemed like everything she had done had been useless. "No problem, kill me too," said Yun Shi. At that moment, a smile appeared on her face, a smile of agony. Suddenly, a deadly qi emerged from her body. Everybody was surprised. "It doesn't look good," cried Lin Feng in alarm. His body flickered and he appeared behind Yun Shi's body. It was already too late though. Yun Shi groaned, she slammed the deadly qi into her chest and blood gushed from her mouth. A flower, which had yet to blossom, had already withered. Lin Feng caught Yun Shi's body and his face turned deathly pale. Yun Shi killed herself, surprisingly, she took her own life. How foolish, what a naive young girl. She was so young, she was only 17 years old. She was supposed to be experiencing the most beautiful years of her life. However, because she had discovered how bitter reality really was, she couldn't stand it and killed herself. It shouldn't have ended that way. The members of the Wuxia sect were astonished. Yun Shi's suicide was unexpected. However, they were only surprised for a few seconds and cold expressions quickly reappeared on their faces again. In their opinion, her death was insignificant. She had died, so what? Yun Shi's body softly collapsed into Lin Feng's chest. Her head was raised. Blood was flowing out of her little mouth. Her naive young eyes were looking at Lin Feng and she was still smiling. "I'm sorry. I didn't have the chance to fight for you. All of this happened because of me." Lin Feng was wiping the blood from her mouth with the greatest care. He was unceasingly shaking his head. When Lin Feng looked at her deathly pale smile, he could see that she was very beautiful and soft-hearted. Unfortunately, the flower had chosen to wither over blossoming into a cruel world. I know that it is not because they don't believe me, it is that they disdain my words. I couldn't convince them. Therefore, death was the only solution. Yun Shi's voice gradually lost in intensity. Lin Feng raised his head and felt like he was going to cry. He wasn't like Yun Shi, he wasn't naive. He was convinced that his efforts would bring him good luck. However, he had already experienced the bitterness of the cruelty of people in his past life. "Lin Feng, I'm already a young woman and I have no one to love. Please grant me my first kiss," said Yun Shi suddenly with a shy smile. Immediately after, she added, "Just consider this as the last wish of a fellow cultivator." "All right," said Lin Feng while solemnly nodding. How could he refuse the last request of such a young and naive girl? He slightly lowered his head and wiped away the blood as he softly kissed her warm lips. She looked beautiful and resplendent. So that's what it feels like to kiss someone. Yun Shi's face slightly turned red. Immediately after, her beautiful naive eyes slowly closed. When Lin Feng saw her close her eyes, he raised his head while looking to the sky to stop his tears and took a deep agonizing breath. "Kill! Kill! Kill! Kill!" Lin Feng was shouting these words, his voice was extremely loud and filled with fury. In the air, 3 silhouettes appeared and rushed towards him. An incredibly strong and powerful ice-cold chi suddenly emerged in the atmosphere enveloping everybody. The powerful chi made the ground vibrate. That purple light was Lin Feng's signal for Mr. Hua, Mr. Qi, as well as Meng Qing. They had all seen the purple light and rushed to that location, it was just that they hadn't shown themselves until now. When the people of the Wuxia sect sensed the terrifying energies, their hearts started pounding. What a terrifying chi! The people of the Wuxia sect were looking at the 3 people, who had just landed next to Lin Feng, which made them shake from head to toe. What a terrifying chi! The people of the Wuxia sect were looking at the 3 people, who had just landed next to Lin Feng, which made them shake from head to toe. They had heard that 2 strong cultivators stood on Lin Feng's side. There was the old man Mr. Hua and a delicate-looking girl whose face was covered with a fine veil. But at that moment, there was one more person, Mr. Qi, and besides, Mr. Qi's Qi was terrifying. "Mr. Qi, Mr. Hua, kill them, all of them." Lin Feng's Qi was getting even more brutal. Mr. Qi and Mr. Hua slightly nodded. Their terrifying Qi was getting more and more powerful, especially the Qi from Mr. Qi. The strength of the Qi that he was releasing already exceeded that of the 3rd Xian Qi layer. 4th Xian Qi layer. The elders of the Wuxia sect were suddenly feeling uneasy. They were furious. On Lin Feng's side, there was another powerful cultivator. He was even stronger than Mr. Hua and the girl. He had broken through to the 4th Xian Qi layer. At the scale of the Xian Qi layer, one layer already constituted a huge difference. How foolish! Hideous facial expressions appeared on all these people's faces. They wanted to kill Lin Feng. At this moment, they were the ones in danger. Lin Feng. She still has one breath left in her body. I will give her a pill. A miracle could still happen, said Mr. Huo while putting a pill in Yun Shi's mouth. Immediately after, the strength of the pure qi spread through her body and his finger pressed between her eyebrows. Lin Feng was stupefied. He could sense it. He was dumbstruck. Indeed, Yun Shi still had a breath in her lungs. She was extremely weak. A moment ago, Lin Feng's heart had been filled with so much hatred and murderous intentions that he hadn't noticed it. Mr. Huo, said Lin Feng, whose eyes were filled with hope. A small light appeared between her eyebrows, it was pulsating. Then, Mr. Huo took his finger off her head and looked at Lin Feng. She will not die within the next 7 days, but the blood vessels are completely destroyed. She's severely injured. She will not live past 7 days. Lin Feng was dumbstruck and hastily replied, "Is there no solution?" "There is one," said Mr. Huo. He then remained silent for a moment and said, while frowning, "But only monstrously powerful pills can save her life." Pills, lights were flashing in Lin Feng's eyes. Immediately after, he handed Yun Shi over to Meng Qing and said, "Meng Qing, take care of her." Meng Qing looked at Lin Feng. She was surprised, but immediately after she nodded and took Yun Shi in her arms. After that Lin Feng handed Yun Shi over to Meng Qing. He turned around and stared at Wu Gang. His terrifying deadly qi turned into a sword which immediately rushed towards Wu Gang. Wu Gang couldn't help but move backwards, his face turned deathly pale. He was terrified of Lin Feng. Lin Feng looked frightening. His deadly qi was monstrous in power. "If I don't kill you, it means that justice doesn't exist," said Lin Feng as his voice filled with killing intent. He then said, "Mr. Qi, Mr. Huo, kill them all. Sorry for the trouble. It's been a while since I last fought. I still haven't enjoyed a good fight since I broke through to the 4th Xian Qi layer," said Mr. Qi while smiling. His silhouette flickered and in a flash he disappeared. Ah! In a flash, a horrible shriek spread in the atmosphere. Mr. Qi's palm immediately crashed into an elder's body. Immediately, that elder's chest started burning and a black mark appeared. That elder was at the 1st Xian Qi layer. He had just died. The difference between a cultivator of the 1st Xian Qi layer and the 4th Xian Qi layer was enormous. There was a difference of 3 layers. It was a gigantic gap. The strength between layers was even more vast than the Ling Qi layer. In a flash, the elder was killed. The elders of the Luoxia sect were all incomparably pale. They were all cultivators of the Xian Qi layer, they were all treasures in their sect, but at that moment, they could easily get killed at any moment. Besides, there was one thing that scared them. A moment ago, Mr. Qi had killed a cultivator of the Xian Qi layer in one strike. Well, what about them? A sensation of danger invaded their hearts. Maybe they made a mistake on that day. "Everybody, act together and defeat the enemies," said the leader of the elders, who was the one at the 3rd Xian Qi layer. But when he finished talking, a terrifying fireball appeared. Mr. Huo was attacking him. "Old friend, I'll keep this one under control, you kill the others. I will see how much time you need," said Mr. Huo. He was going to fight against the cultivator of the 3rd Xian Qi layer. The other ones had only broken through to the 1st and 2nd Xian Qi layer. Mr. Qi would easily kill them all. He wouldn't need much time to deal with them. "All right." Mr. Qi nodded and took a huge step. An insanely violent pure qi started spinning around his body, which made everybody's heartbeat accelerate. What a monstrous ability! Mr. Huo was going to take care of the elder at the third Xian Qi layer, so how would the others resist Mr. Qi without him? They had absolutely no hope. They would never be able to resist the power without the support of a stronger cultivator. At that moment, Mr. Qi was moving towards a cultivator of the first Xian Qi layer. That person didn't even try to release his qi, he immediately tried to run away. However, how could a cultivator at the first Xian Qi layer be faster than one of the fourth Xian Qi layer? In a flash, a monstrous force descended from the sky. He abruptly turned his head around and immediately saw a brutal attack crash into him. Another cultivator of the Xian Qi layer had just died. Dread was invading their hearts at that moment. The cultivator of the fourth Xian Qi layer was way too terrifying. Their hearts were filled with regret. They regretted siding with Wu Gang and trying to kill Lin Feng, while letting Yun Shi die. Now, not only would they not have the power to kill Lin Feng, but instead Lin Feng was repaying their hostility several times over. Wu Gang, bastard! Cursed the members of the Luoxia sect at that moment. That bastard had provoked Lin Feng, and the consequences would be terrifying. They could all possibly die today because of it. At that moment, a purple light was furiously circling Lin Feng's body. At the same time, a terrifying sword energy rose into the air and then rushed towards Wu Gang. Wu Gang's heart was pounding violently. Lin Feng was terrifying, he looked like a death god. In a flash the purple energy wrapped around a person in front of Wu Gang. The purple energy lifted the person into the air. His legs were frenetically moving above the ground, but he was unable to escape. Lin Feng's hand was rushing through the air. The sword energy burst forth and a blood mark appeared between that person's eyebrows. It looked like a sword had pierced through his head. Run, run! The other disciples were panic-stricken, they didn't want to fight at all. The elders at the Xian Qi layer were being slaughtered by Mr. Qi. Besides, none of the disciples could fight against Lin Feng. If they couldn't escape, the only possibility was to die. It was a dead end for them. Escape? Lin Feng's deadly qi became even more violent. His mouth looked distorted for a moment, and then several hundred purple snakes appeared, which threw themselves at the escaping enemies, wrapping their bodies around the escaping disciples. At that moment, in the air, a few silhouettes were violently struggling. Everybody will die. Lin Feng's voice sounded ice-cold to the extent that it was piercing through to the bones. He raised both his hands high up into the air and a sword appeared. It was made of pure qi. It looked like the sword of a war god. That sword was filled with deadly qi, sword qi, and battle energy. Besides, it was gigantic. Lin Feng slowly rose into the air. His sword was dazzling and it suddenly shot through the air like a meteor. The entire atmosphere was consumed by a rain of blood as the sword slashed down. One sword made of qi was enough to kill all of them. There wasn't a single disciple left alive. Battle noises were unceasingly spreading through the atmosphere. Wu Gang was looking at the corpses unceasingly falling onto the ground. His heart was violently pounding, and it was getting worse each time a new corpse hit the floor. Everybody had died. Only one person was left, Lin Feng. He had meticulously killed everybody. Wu Gang raised his head and looked at Lin Feng's face, it was filled with killing intent. Fear invaded Wu Gang's entire soul. He was hopeless and terrified. "Don't kill me. I know that I was wrong," said Wu Gang while frantically shaking his hand. He finally regretted that he tried to put the blame on Lin Feng. He had invited the fury of a god of death. The arrogance had disappeared from his face, he also didn't have his evil smile anymore. Instead, there was only fear on his face. Everybody had died. All the elders of the Xian Qi layer had died. Those of the Ling Qi layer had all been slaughtered under Lin Feng's sword made of qi. "You know that you are wrong," said Lin Feng while smiling coldly. Was admitting that he was at fault enough? "Didn't you say that I attacked you by surprise? Now, I will give you the chance to attack me," said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. After seeing such a slaughter, how could Wu Gang still dare to fight? His body flickered and he immediately tried to escape. After that, when Wu Gang's body was in mid-air, a purple snake immediately wrapped around him and brought him back. He appeared in front of Lin Feng, who raised his head and saw Wu Gang, tied up. "You want to run away?" said Lin Feng while smiling coldly. He raised his sword, a horrible shriek spread through the air. Wu Gang's legs were both cut off to stop him running away. Wu Gang's body was tied up by the purple snake. Lin Feng had just cut off both of his legs to stop him from running. Blood was unceasingly flowing. Wu Gang's body was violently shaking. His eyes were filled with agony. Wu Gang's body was tied up by the purple snake. Lin Feng had just cut off both of his legs to stop him from running. Blood was unceasingly flowing. Wu Gang's body was violently shaking. His eyes were filled with agony. "That was for your shameless and cowardly actions," said Lin Feng, sounding cold. His sword glowed again and another agonizing scream spread through the atmosphere. Wu Gang's left arm was cut off. The pain was so extreme for Wu Gang that he even started to cry. The endless pain made him hate himself, he regrets so much. Why? Why? Why had he infuriated a monster? What he had done wasn't much different from self-destruction. All that endless pain and agony was because he provoked Lin Feng. "That was because you humiliated me," said Lin Feng, sounding indifferent. He looked expressionless and emotionless. "Then, the last one will be for Yun Shi." A light streaked through the air and Wu Gang's last arm was cut off as well. Immediately after, the snake let go of Wu Gang's body, which immediately fell down onto the ground while wailing. "You are shameless, cowardly and vicious. I will be even more vicious than you would be to your opponent, so I will not kill you. I will let you suffer a life not worth living," said Lin Feng coldly. Immediately after, the purple snakes vanished and Lin Feng slowly turned around. "Ah!" Another horrible shriek emerged into the atmosphere. The last cultivator of the third Xian Qi layer had just been killed by Mr. Qi and Mr. Hua. All the members of the Wuxia sect that were in Celestial River had died. A group of strong cultivators with quite a few talents had come to Celestial River to steal the heavenly dragon cauldron, however, they hadn't obtained the treasure and instead met an early death. The only one left was Wu Gang, who would be better off dead than alive. Besides, all of this had happened because of a small incident. This was all because Wu Gang was a malicious person who accused other people of false crimes. 2 of his fellow disciples had been killed and he wasn't able to avenge them, so he had the evil idea to rape Yun Shi and use Ba Dao as a scapegoat, until Lin Feng appeared. In an instant, a group of extremely strong cultivators had been killed. 1 cultivator of the third Xian Qi layer, 2 of the second and 3 of the first. They were a monstrously strong force, but in an instant, they all died. From that moment on, the Wuxia sect would no longer be considered as one of the powerful sections. And this all happened because they chose to make enemies of Lin Feng. Lin Feng looked at the ground covered with corpses. He was absolutely expressionless, it didn't affect him at all. He could still remember how cold and detached those people were when Yun Shi tried to commit suicide. Lin Feng's heart was filled with coldness. Killing such scum didn't affect him at all. Lin Feng looked at Meng Qing, who was still holding Yun Shi. He then looked at Mr. Hua and asked, "Mr. Hua, I want to save her. What pills do we need? Her blood's vessels have been severely damaged. Apart from the divine waters pill, there is nothing that can save her," said Mr. Hua slowly, which made Mr. Qi frown. Were divine waters pills the only solution to save her? Lin Feng noticed that Mr. Qi was puzzled. He then asked again, "Mr. Hua, what kind of pills are the divine waters pills?" "Xian level pills of high quality, at least," They are divine pills. Divine pills. Lin Feng's heart started beating faster. These pills were at least Xian-level pills of higher quality. Lin Feng, even with the strength of his soul, was unable to concoct Xian-level pills of higher quality. Besides, she only had 7 days to live, which didn't give him enough time to concoct the pills to save her. It seemed like Yun Shi was going to die in any case. Is there no other solution? Asked Lin Feng while looking at that naive young girl. He couldn't bear seeing Yun Shi die. Only if we could prevent her body from aging and the blood vessels from deteriorating, but in her current state, she will live 7 days at maximum. In 7 days, the blood vessels will weaken and she will die. I can't think of any other pill which would have a better chance at saving her than the Divine Waters pill, said Mr. Hu while shaking his head, which made Lin Feng remain silent. Wasn't there any solution to save her? I have a solution, said a cold voice which surprised Lin Feng. It was Meng Qing. When she saw that Lin Feng looked troubled, Meng Qing lowered her head and said, I can freeze her, which will slow the functions of her body, but she will not die. Huh? Mr. Hu was surprised. Meng Qing had that kind of ability. If you can do it, then let's give it a try. Then, if we manage to get the Divine Waters pill someday, we'll give it to her and save her. Meng Qing, said Lin Feng while looking at Meng Qing. He obviously understood what this would require. Let's go back, said Meng Qing while carrying Yun Shi. She turned around and walked towards Mr. Hua's house. Lin Feng and the others followed her. Only Ba Dao stayed there and picked up the Na rings and precious items from the corpses. After that, he followed the others. After they left, a crowd of people arrived at the battlefield. When they saw all the corpses, they were dumbstruck. They were dead. Every single person had died. All these corpses were strong cultivators of the Luoxia sect, and there were even extremely strong cultivators of the Xian Qi layer. They were all on the ground, lifeless. It's Lin Feng again. How terrifying, thought the people in the crowd while shivering. Lin Feng was a death god. It was better to stay as far away from him as possible. After that, the Luoxia sect would start to fall into decline. They had lost such a powerful and influential group of people. They had all perished in Celestial River. Lin Feng and the 2 others were outside a secret room in Mr. Hua's house. Meng Qing was inside that secret room with Yun Shi. Lin Feng and the 2 others didn't know what the situation looked like inside. They waited for a while and then, the huge door of the secret room opened itself. Meng Qing's silhouette appeared at the door. She looked at Lin Feng and said, It's all right now. After talking, Meng Qing immediately left and went to her own room. Lin Feng entered the secret room and slightly shivered because of the temperature. It was freezing inside the secret room. He only saw a bed and a frozen silhouette lying on it. It was precisely Yun Shi. At that moment, she was frozen in ice. She completely entombed in ice. Lin Feng and the others couldn't feel any qi emerging from Yun Shi's body. There shouldn't be any problems, said Mr. Qi in a low voice. Lin Feng nodded and said, I trust Meng Qing. Mr. Qi didn't say anything. Even though Meng Qing didn't say much, Mr. Qi could see that Meng Qing and Lin Feng's relationship was of an intimate nature. Alright, let's let her rest here in peace. Maybe when she wakes up, she will just have the feeling that she was in a dream, said Mr. Qi. Lin Feng slightly nodded. There was no other solution. At that moment, Lin Feng had no way to obtain Divine Waters pills. What he needed to do was to improve his cultivation level. Let's go, said Lin Feng while leaving the secret room, whose door then slowly closed itself. Mr. Qi and Mr. Hu left and then Lin Feng walked to Meng Qing's room and knocked. I'm resting, said a cold and detached voice inside the room. She sounded like she was talking to a stranger and was unwilling to let him enter. Lin Feng ignored her cold and detached voice, and immediately entered her room. Lin Feng entered the room and saw that Meng Qing's body was curled up on the bed. She was shaking from head to toe because her entire body was covered by a layer of frost. When Lin Feng saw that Meng Qing's body was covered by a layer of frost, he felt a pain invade his heart. "What are you doing?" said Meng Qing, sounding cold and detached. Lin Feng was looking at her, his eyes were filled with compassion. Lin Feng roughly pulled Meng Qing into his arms, he was firmly and tightly embracing her. He then said, "Meng Qing, why do you have to do this? You know perfectly well that you don't need to go through such pain." Obviously, Meng Qing was in that situation because she had frozen Yunxi's body. Now, her body was in pain and freezing from the powerful ice qi. Meng Qing nibbled her lip. Even though Lin Feng's embrace was rough, each time he embraced her, her heart would still melt. "I don't like seeing you suffer," said Meng Qing to Lin Feng, which made his heart twitch. She just didn't want to see him suffer, nothing more. Because of that simple reason, Meng Qing preferred suffering in silence to protect Lin Feng. Lin Feng softly yet firmly embraced Meng Qing and said slowly, "Meng Qing, I am even less willing to see you suffer. You have to understand clearly that, for me, you are the most important person in my life. For me, you are the most important person in my life." When Meng Qing heard Lin Feng, her heart started pounding frantically. The incredible pain and her worrisome feelings seemed like they had completely vanished in an instant. She was the most important person for Lin Feng. For Lin Feng, nobody could replace Meng Qing, she had gone through so much with him. "Then why are you not kissing me?" said a Meng Qing with a voice which sounded like it was a dream. Lin Feng was stupefied. His face was filled with joy and delight. It was the first time that Meng Qing expressed her love for him. Lin Feng, who was still holding Meng Qing, gazed into her eyes and then moved to passionately kissing her. It wasn't a soft and gentle kiss. Rather, it was a wild and passionate kiss. It was filled with the passion of youth. When Meng Qing felt Lin Feng's lips, her heart started pounding. It seemed like the endless ice had melted thanks to one kiss. When Meng Qing felt Lin Feng's lips, her heart started pounding. It seemed like the endless ice had melted thanks to one kiss. She had never had such a feeling in her life. It felt so warm, so pure. She hoped that she would be able to stay by Lin Feng's side forever, that would bring her true happiness. Lin Feng's arms were still firmly wrapped around Meng Qing's body. He remained unwilling to let go of her. His heart was filled with an intense fire. His hands were moving across Meng Qing's perfect body. When Meng Qing sensed Lin Feng's hands, she slightly shivered. Immediately after, she stopped Lin Feng's hands from moving. Their lips separated. Lin Feng's hands were, as before, still on Meng Qing's body. They were soft and limpid as water. Besides, at that moment, Meng Qing's face wasn't filled with coldness anymore but with a tender expression. Her face was pink. She looked so sweet. At the moment when Lin Feng wanted to react, Meng Qing said something. "Lin Feng, I want to hear a story." "A story?" A light flashed in Lin Feng's eyes. He looked at that sweet and delicate face, how could he refuse? "What kind of story do you want to hear?" asked Lin Feng while looking into her limpid eyes. "The fairy fox story," said Meng Qing in a low voice while putting her head on Lin Feng's shoulder. At that moment, she didn't look cold and detached at all. She was filled with softness. Lin Feng slightly nodded and his lips started moving as he started his narration. It was a beautiful moment, like a dream. Lin Feng's story continued for a while. When he finished telling the story, he left Meng Qing's room and closed the door. Immediately after, he disappeared from outside Meng Qing's room. "Lin Feng," whispered Meng Qing when she saw Lin Feng disappear. She then said, in a voice which sounded like it came from another world, Lin Feng, at the moment, I am not good enough to be with you, but you should definitely wait for me. When Meng Qing finished talking, she leant against the window. There was only Lin Feng in her thoughts. Lin Feng's words were still resonating in her mind. For me, you are the most important person in my life. Lin Feng could never blame Meng Qing for being so cold. These days, her heart was finally started to melt. In her heart, there was a thread of warmth. Meng Qing was Lin Feng's. She couldn't run away. Lin Feng would never allow her heart to break free. Lin Feng went to the room dedicated to concocting pills. Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi were there already. Mr. Hua, I want you to help me gather spiritual herbs and then start concocting pills, said Lin Feng, going straight to the point. Mr. Hua was surprised. He asked Lin Feng, what are we concocting and how many? Spiritual sanguine pills, pure earth pills, vitality pills and red sun pills. I need 30,000 of each, said Lin Feng solemnly, which made the two old men shiver. 30,000 of a single pill, what a gigantic amount. Spiritual sanguine pills are Ling-level pills of higher quality, the three others are medium quality. These 4 pills would be useless for cultivators of the Xian Qi layer. For cultivators under the 6th Ling Qi layer, the effects would be incredibly beneficial, especially the spiritual sanguine pills. If a cultivator under the 6th Ling Qi layer used the 4 pills together, I can guarantee that he would break through to the next Ling Qi layer. Besides, there would be no side effects at all from the instant breakthrough. Mr. Hua was looking at Lin Feng and said slowly, Lin Feng, if you gave 1 pill of each to 30,000 cultivators under the 6th Ling Qi layer, they would all break through to the next layer. You. Lin Feng nodded. Mr. Hua, of course, knew what Lin Feng intended to do. Mr. Hua, I have an army. I want to increase their strength. I want them to break through to a higher layer. Increase the strength of each member of an army and increase your total strength. Even if Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi were much stronger than cultivators of the Ling Qi layer, if faced with 30,000 soldiers which all broke through to a higher Ling Qi layer at once, that would be terrifying. Besides, Lin Feng sounded extremely calm when talking about it. Concocting these 4 pills is not a problem. Besides, we can concoct them all at the same time. Even though there is a high success rate, 120,000 pills require a few days before we can refine them properly. Even with Mr. Hua's vast knowledge and abilities, he couldn't concoct Xian-level pills of lower quality with even 100% success rate. Always succeeding was improbable. Concocting Ling-level pills of higher quality wasn't hard for him though, and then he could concoct and refine an incredible amount of Ling-level pills of medium quality with a very high success rate. I can concoct at the same time as him, said Mr. Qi. Lin Feng smiled to the 2 old men and said, I'm not worried. Sorry for bothering you again. You can concoct at the same time. I would like to personally start the process though. Using the earth fusion, you too can give me direction. Pay attention. Mr. Qi and I will concoct the pills. When one of us takes a break, you can practice your skills, we'll guide you, said Mr. Hua. All right, said Lin Feng, obviously happy about the arrangement. He had 2 senior alchemists with him. He would probably be able to improve his concocting abilities extremely quickly. When they finished discussing all these things, they immediately started concocting pills, with absolute determination. At the Wuxia sect, the setting sun was shining upon a palace in the mountains. It seemed like the entire beauty of the Wuxia sect resided there. It was absolutely magnificent. However, at that moment, at the Wuxia sect, nobody felt like admiring the beautiful scenery. In a vast palace, the patriarch of the Wuxia sect, Gu Chunqiu, punched a table on his side which immediately broke into pieces. He was releasing an extremely cold qi. They had all died. The powerful cultivators of the Wuxia sect had gone to Celestial River and had all been killed. He had lost more than half of the strongest cultivators in the sect. That calamity made his sect become one of the weakest of the large sections. Maybe they would even walk on the same path as the Yunhai sect and end up being exterminated. The funniest part was that the calamity hadn't occurred while trying to steal the heavenly dragon cauldron. All of this had happened because they crossed paths with one person, Lin Feng. Wu Gang had offended Lin Feng, which was why Lin Feng killed all the outstanding elders and disciples of the Wuxia sect in Celestial River. There wasn't even one person left standing. Gather all the elders and core disciples of the sect and send them all to Celestial River, said Gu Chun Chiu coldly, which made other people shiver. Gathering all the elders and core disciples of the sect implied that there wouldn't be anyone left to protect the sect. What did Gu Chun Chiu want to do? A sudden realization flashed in one of the elders' eyes. It seemed on the outside like Gu Chun Chiu wanted to get his revenge, but in fact, there was another purpose: obtain the heavenly dragon cauldron. These days, many of the elders and disciples of the Luoxia sect had been killed by Lin Feng. The sect had almost become barren of talent. If they wanted to rise again, they needed to find something to aid them from outside the sect. The heavenly dragon cauldron was one of the aids they could get from outside. That was a good opportunity for them to regain their lost power. Therefore, Gu Chun Chiu was sending these people. He obviously wanted to kill Lin Feng, but above all, he wanted the heavenly dragon cauldron. The setting sun was gradually going down while darkness gradually invaded the atmosphere over the Luoxia sect. At that moment, outside of the Luoxia sect, there was a cloud of dust. A group of dark silhouettes were rushing at full speed toward Celestial River. At the city gate of Celestial River, many people were waiting. When they saw the dark silhouettes in the distance come towards them, they were a bit surprised and all got prepared for a potential fight. Those days, everybody was coming to Celestial River because of the heavenly dragon cauldron. Besides, apart from extraordinarily strong and influential groups, nobody prevented anyone from trying to get the cauldron. Preventing people without backing from entering the city would at least reduce the number of people who were interested in the cauldron. There was more hope that way. Far in the distance, the dark silhouettes were approaching at full speed. Many people blocked the path and shouted, "Stop immediately." However, nobody paid attention to them. The sky was pitch black, it looked cold, desolate and very sinister. There was a strange coldness invading people's hearts. It was silent. This crowd of black silhouettes were way too silent. There wasn't a single sound coming from their horses. People focused their eyes and fixedly stared at the people who were coming. Finally, the darkness gradually became clarity, but when the crowd saw these dark silhouettes, their hearts started beating faster. Coffins. That group of silhouettes were not riding horses, and instead it was a group of coffins moving in formation. How dreadful! Stop! Shouted many people, but they only saw that each and every single coffin was calmly approaching them. It looked absolutely insane. Immediately after, the crowd was unable to move. In a flash, they all disappeared. They had been taken inside the coffins. Ah! A blood-curdling scream spread through the atmosphere in the pitch-black night. Some silhouettes were moving out of the coffins. They had human shapes, but they looked like zombies. In a flash, the living cultivators had been devoured by the corpses. The hearts of the people in the distant crowd started pounding. They wanted to prevent these people from entering the city, but they remained in their original positions. They were not moving the slightest iota. Cold sweat was unceasingly flowing down their backs. How terrifying! These black coffins, in a flash, were inside the city. When the silhouettes disappeared from sight, the crowd sighed and took a deep breath. They all fell, seated on the ground, and took a long time to calm down. Who were those people? In the middle of the room dedicated to concocting pills, there was a rich medicinal smell floating in the atmosphere. There was a cloud of smoke which was filled with a rich and pleasant fragrance that filled the air. In the middle of the room dedicated to concocting pills, there was a rich medicinal smell floating in the atmosphere. There was a cloud of smoke which was filled with a rich and pleasant fragrance that filled the air. Above the gigantic cauldron, the concoction was unceasingly foaming and bubbling. In the cauldron, there was an incredible quantity of pills. "Finished," said Lin Feng firmly. An incredible number of small lights immediately rose up in the air, followed by an explosive sound. The atmosphere of that laboratory had once again exploded. Rumbling noises spread in the air. Mr. Qi stopped the fire and wryly smiled at Lin Feng. That guy. He was a monster. Mr. Qi wasn't the only one. Mr. Hua was also fixedly staring at Lin Feng. Lin Feng, who had broken through to the 9th Ling Qi layer, had surprisingly been able to concoct almost 1,000 Ling level pills of medium quality at the same time. In the previous days, Lin Feng had been sticking with the two old men. Through his earth fusion, he had learned a lot from them. They had never given him any instruction, but by being in the room and observing the concoction process, Lin Feng had learned how to concoct pills and was currently able to concoct Ling level pills of medium quality on his own. Besides, Lin Feng's concoction speed had also surpassed that of the two old men. At that moment, Lin Feng only lacked one thing: fire. He still required Mr. Qi's inner fire to be able to concoct pills. If Lin Feng had been able to control his own form of inner fire, concocting pills would have been even easier for him, and he would also have been quicker. The only thing was preventing Lin Feng from progressing at that moment: fire. Once Lin Feng reached the Xian Qi layer, even if he didn't use inner fire, he would at least still be able to condense pure Qi into fire, which was also suitable to concoct pills. However, fire made of pure Qi would not be as strong as Mr. Hua's inner fire, but would still increase his ability. Lin Feng opened his mouth. He looked satisfied. He finally put these last pills into his Na stone on his ring. They had already finished concocting the 120,000 pills. They only needed to go back to Yangzhou City and they could give them to the soldiers to increase their strength. They would be able to break through to the next layer, which was a monstrous move. A group of cultivators of the 5th Ling Qi layer couldn't compete with a group of cultivators of the 6th Ling Qi layer. The difference was huge. A cultivator of the 6th Ling Qi layer could kill a cultivator of the 5th Ling Qi layer with a single full power strike. These pills would enable 30,000 troops of the 5th Ling Qi layer to break through to the 6th Ling Qi layer. Hearing this would have made many people go insane with fright. Of course, Lin Feng had only been able to achieve this because he had met the two old alchemists. In Xueyu, there were few people above the 3rd Xian Qi layer. Besides, cultivators of the 3rd Xian Qi layer who were alchemists as well were so rare that it was a miracle to find even one. "Mr. Hua, Mr. Qi, thank you very much," said Lin Feng while nodding at the two old men in a very sincere way. There were 90,000 Ling level pills of medium quality and 30,000 Ling level pills of high quality. Exchanging them for purity stones would have enabled the seller to earn a monumental amount of purity stones. Besides, in the laboratory while concocting the pills, Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi had also taught Lin Feng the art of concocting pills, and they had also become able to concoct pills together, which was an extremely rare experience. Experience and knowledge were the most precious things for an alchemist. Mr. Hua shook his head, smiled wryly and said, "Lin Feng, if you could control fire, even though the pills you refined are not high-level ones, considering the speed and the quality of the pills, you are much more skilled than both of us, old men." I am ashamed. Lin Feng was indeed really gifted at concocting pills. He hadn't never seen anyone concoct pills before. Besides, the strength of his soul was also incredible. It seemed like he could do anything he wished. His soul control was extremely advanced, even if he couldn't rival with the two old men yet in terms of strength. In terms of control, he was better than them. For example, with the way they controlled their souls, they could concoct 100 pills, but there were always some incidents which prevented them from advancing further. But such things couldn't happen to Lin Feng, he could control the entire concoction process very accurately without mistakes. That was amazing. They could almost guess how monstrous Lin Feng's soul control was. "You taught me everything," said Lin Feng modestly. "All right. You two can stop exchanging compliments. We still have a long way before being able to concoct divine waters pills. None of us is able to concoct them," said Mr. Qi, interrupting Mr. Hua and Lin Feng. He pulled them back to reality when he said that. Indeed, they still had to progress a lot to make divine waters pills. Even with 3 cultivators in harmony, they still had a long way before being able to concoct them. "In the coming weeks, we should stay here and concoct pills. We should also be discreet, we don't know what's happening out there," said Mr. Qi in a low voice. Immediately after, the 3 of them left the concoction room and arrived in a huge living room. At that moment, in the distance, a silhouette flickered. When Lin Feng saw the person, lights flashed in his eyes. Lin Feng had finally left the concoction room. During that short time, everything had turned upside down, but Lin Feng and the 2 old men knew nothing about it. "Ba Dao, you arrived at the perfect moment," said Lin Feng. "How is it outside?" Ba Dao remained silent for a moment and then said only one word: chaos. These days, in Celestial River, there are many strong cultivators. They all belong to the greatest influence spheres of the country. There are also some absolutely unknown people who, when they heard the news, immediately came to Celestial River. They are alone between 2 influential groups. "What 2 influential groups?" asked Lin Feng. "One of these groups, you know it, it's the Dream Pavilion. The Dream Pavilion seems to be a small part of a larger organization. The cultivator of the 3rd Xian Qi layer, last time, was only in charge in Celestial River." Lin Feng was stupefied. A small part. Lin Feng suddenly remembered what Lan Jiao had told him on that night. She belonged to a very influential group, but back then, Lin Feng hadn't paid attention to that. It seemed like Lan Jiao hadn't lied. "What is the other one?" "The other one is evil. They don't ride horses, they fly through the air in coffins. Even though they are not mounted, they are extremely strong. Besides, their skills resemble those of Mo Tsanglan. They can consume other people's pure qi and flesh. They probably are the same kind of cultivators as Mo Tsanglan. In Celestial River, a myriad of people have already been killed because of them," said Ba Dao. "Like Mo Tsanglan." Lin Feng frowned. He was feeling a bit annoyed. Antyun belonged to one of these influential forces. Besides, the other sphere of influence works with Mo Tsanglan. They all hated Lin Feng from the bottom of their heart. If both these groups attacked Lin Feng, the situation would be troublesome. Apart from these 2 spheres of influence, there are many other strong cultivators from Xueyu. For example, every single person belonging to the Luo Xia sect has come, even their patriarch Gu Chunqiu. Besides, there are also people from the Haoyu sect, the Ice and Snow Mountain Village, the Wanshou sect, the Yu clan, and even some people from the Imperial clan. They are all here in Celestial River. It is encircled by strong cultivators. That heavenly dragon cauldron has led to such an unstable situation. It seems like while we were concocting pills, it became chaotic outside," said Mr. Qi indifferently. "Everybody wanted to steal the treasure." "Yes. Because of the ancient cauldron, many horrible things happened. Many strong cultivators even died. They want to end the conflict in 3 days," said Ba Dao. "End the conflict? What does that mean?" asked Lin Feng, perplexed. "I don't know who decided it. There is a rumor in Celestial River that everybody gathered outside of Celestial River to solve the issue and decide to whom the ancient cauldron would belong. That suggestion, according to the rumors, also received the approval of the majority. How will they agree on a specific person?" asked Lin Feng. "They still haven't chosen yet. The rumors spread quickly, and it is that the treasure is already in the hands of the people with the coffins. If they don't understand that, everybody in Celestial River will kill them and then go with the plan everybody agreed upon. Everybody agreed on this course of action. How smart is the person at the origin of all of this? Thought Lin Feng. Those who hadn't received the treasure would of course agree. Before, everybody just had malicious intentions and would have never thought of such a thing, but that move, even though it seemed simple, was actually very smart. The person who had spread the rumor had managed to make everybody agree on a solution. Celestial River suddenly became extremely calm, but that calmness was oppressive. It was clear to everybody it was an indication of the coming storm. Celestial River suddenly became extremely calm, but that calmness was oppressive. It was clear to everybody it was an indication of the coming storm. At that moment, everybody was calmly staring at the mystical and extremely strong cultivators in their coffins. If they didn't accept the offer, the crowd would definitely attack them. Even though these people were extremely strong, in the middle of all these influential groups, nobody dared make a strange move. 2 days later, at night, that situation reached its breaking point. In the vast ancient city, in the middle of that night, the main street was almost completely depopulated. Extremely few people were to be seen. At the city, there were many people calmly waiting. In the middle of that crowd, there was one silhouette. That person was wearing a black chang pao. That person was covered from head to toe in black to the extent that their face was also covered. That person's eyes were firmly closed as if they were sound asleep, but that person already knew that every single thing around them, including the slightest grain of sand, was under their control. In the earth fusion state, he could perceive everything clearly. It even seemed like the atmosphere around the city gate belonged to his world. That black silhouette was precisely Lin Feng. He had meticulously disguised himself. In Lin Feng's mind appeared many silhouettes. They were coming towards the city gate, and there were more and more people joining them. There were a few very strong cultivators, who, when they arrived near the city gate, started walking softly and lightly, almost completely silently. It was difficult to notice them, but nothing could escape from Lin Feng's earth fusion. If someone came, Lin Feng was already well aware of their every movement. At that moment, in the horizon, a silhouette wearing a snowy white chang pao appeared in Lin Feng's vision, which made him frown. A sword appeared, and it seemed like a powerful energy was being released. He's finally here, thought Lin Feng with a cold expression on the corner of his mouth. Immediately after, he slowly opened his eyes, which revealed an endless fierceness. Bing Heting's mood was bad these days. As a great elder of the Ice and Snow Mountain Village, he had brought many people from the sect to Celestial River with the objective to kill Lin Feng, and in the end, apart from him, everybody was killed. After that, the Heavenly Dragon Cauldron had appeared and everybody had started fighting for it, including Bing Heting. He hadn't notified anyone at his sect because he wanted to keep the cauldron for himself. Bing Heting had been closely following Imo Lan and had almost obtained the ancient cauldron, but in the end, he had lost each time. Then, the group of mysterious and extremely strong cultivators had come and Imo Lan gave the ancient cauldron to them. Bing Heting's heart was becoming colder and colder, filled with evilness. He couldn't go back to the sect. He had no choice but to continue hoping for an opportunity to steal the ancient cauldron. Therefore, he had made his move early. As expected, Bing Heting's instincts were correct. Many people had already gathered there, and besides, there were lots of cultivators of the Xian Qi layer. Before, cultivators of the Xian Qi layer were all considered as extremely powerful, but at that moment, there were so many gathered in one place. They were all there for the ancient cauldron. A bunch of crappy cultivators, they also want the ancient cauldron, thought Bing Heting while smiling coldly. That place was filled with extremely strong cultivators. Even cultivators of the first and second Xian Qi layers could only watch. If they tried to get involved, they would certainly lose their life. In the continent, each time a treasure appeared, a large number of people died, but each time, there were people who courted death. At that moment, a cold energy caressed Bing Heting's body, but there was a flash of sword chi as well, which made his face turn rigid. "Who's that?" he said in a small voice. Immediately after, Bing Heting saw a black silhouette flicker. The silhouette left the area of the city gate at full speed and started to rush towards the distance. "Huh?" Bing Heting frowned. What a strong presence. He was surprised. That was Lin Feng, that bastard. There is only one person who wants to die that much. Bing Heting rushed towards Lin Feng. He wasn't worried about attacking Lin Feng. With his cultivation level, even if there was Meng Qing and Mr. Hua, it didn't matter. Even though he couldn't defeat them, retreating wouldn't be a problem either. "Stay there!" shouted Bing Heting coldly. He then threw himself in the air towards Lin Feng at an incredible speed. However, Lin Feng was escaping at full speed as well. In a flash, he had already crossed a distance of a few kilometers. He had flown through the air like a gust of wind. But the gap between a cultivator of the Ling Qi layer and a cultivator of the third Xian Qi layer was gigantic. In a very short time, he had caught up with Lin Feng. Ice Qi shot towards Lin Feng, which made him shiver and slightly move back. He remained silent, but his eyes were still ice cold. Bing Heting, as expected, was chasing him. Boom! A punch emerged from Bing Heting's side and bombarded the atmosphere towards Lin Feng. A heavy frozen air invaded the atmosphere. A snowy white layer of ice had invaded the darkness of the night. However, Lin Feng suddenly changed direction, looked behind him at the attack, and in a flash dodged the attack. His back could feel the cold energy contained within that attack. Lin Feng finally came to a stop and landed steadily on the ground. Bing Heting was coldly staring at him. At that moment, Lin Feng opened his Chang Pao, raised his head and looked at Bing Heting. There was a cold smile on the corner of his lips. "Bing Heting, today is your day of judgment," said Lin Feng. At that moment, two silhouettes appeared in the air. One was following behind the other. In a flash, the two silhouettes blocked Bing Heting's path of retreat. These two silhouettes were, of course, Mr. Hua and Mr. Qi. At the same time, another silhouette appeared by Lin Feng's side, Meng Qing. Initially, he had come to the Celestial River City Gate with the purpose of neutralizing Mo Tsanglan and Bing Heting. Day of Judgment? Unlikely, said Bing Heting while making a motion of retreat. He released a punch made of pure Qi which directly moved towards Mr. Qi. Surprisingly, he was considering Mr. Qi as the weak link. Lin Feng and the others smiled coldly, and immediately after, they saw Mr. Qi raise his hand, out of which, an incredibly gigantic bright red light emerged. Mr. Qi's hand was filled with a violent and brutal Qi boom. A monstrously powerful energy spread in the atmosphere. At the moment when Mr. Qi's attack reached Bing Heting, and with an explosive collision, blood started to flow from Bing Heting's mouth. Using all of his power, Bing Heting quickly moved back. His facial expression had changed drastically. That red-haired old man, who was not there last time, was at the fourth Xian Qi layer. He had chosen him because Mr. Qi was blocking the path in the encirclement, which was the best choice for escape, but in the end, the person blocking him turned out to be at the fourth Xian Qi layer. When had Lin Feng got to know such a strong cultivator? "Kill him," said Lin Feng coldly, which made Bing Heting's heart start pounding. Immediately after, Mr. Qi's silhouette flickered and he rushed through the air. A monstrously terrifying oppressive energy crashed onto Bing Heting's body. His silhouette flickered, he wanted to dodge, but at the same time, a burning energy was rushing towards his back. "Frozen world!" shouted Bing Heting furiously. The level of his technique was extremely advanced. It was already heavily snowing in the area. Boom! A small hand appeared and smashed into Bing Heting's body. It was Meng Qing. She wasn't scared of the cold. In a flash, she had broken through Bing Heting's technique, immediately punching him. "Die!" shouted Mr. Hua. Fireballs rushed towards Bing Heating like meteors falling from the sky. Bing Heating gnashed his teeth and tried to dodge the incoming attack. However, another punch crashed into his body again. This punch contained fire which made Bing Heating groan and fall from the air and land heavily onto the ground. The atmosphere was shaking. Bing Heating's internal organs had been damaged by the punch. He lowered his head and lightly coughed. His chest was extremely painful. At that moment, a sword had pierced straight through his chest. The sword was stabbed through his back and the tip was sticking out the front of his chest. Bing Heating turned his head and looked at Lin Feng. He had the impression that it must be an illusion. He was going to die. He had a great status within his sect, he was a great elder. He was both extremely strong and influential. However, at that moment, he had been killed by Lin Feng's sword. "If you want to kill me or any of my people, you will die," said Lin Feng, sounding ice-cold. His long sword flashed with an intense sword chi, and in a flash, Bing Heating's internal organs were destroyed. A powerful cultivator of the third Xian Qi layer was defeated. He had died. Bing Heating had never thought that he would die in Celestial River. Besides, it hadn't happened when trying to steal the ancient cauldron. Instead, Lin Feng had lured him into a trap. He had died. Bing Heating had never thought that he would die in Celestial River. Besides, it hadn't happened when trying to steal the ancient cauldron. Instead, Lin Feng had lured him into a trap. For strong cultivators had attacked at the same time. Even if Bing Heating was extremely strong, it was easy to kill him with a group. Besides, they hadn't randomly attacked Bing Heating, they had carefully planned the ambush. Lin Feng looked at Bing Heating's corpse and grabbed his Na ring. He immediately stored it in his own Na stone. Considering he had the amazing status of Great Elder at the Ice and Snow Mountain Village, he probably had accumulated an incredible amount of resources during his long life, including some family heirlooms. Besides, Ba Dao had picked up a lot of rings containing Na stones from the other battles and gave them to Lin Feng. They all belonged to cultivators of the Xian Qi layer in the past. Lin Feng had become quite wealthy already. "Let's go." Lin Feng's silhouette flickered and he moved towards the Celestial River City Gate. A short time after, he was in position again. Lin Feng jumped onto the gigantic wall, his back was leaning against a pillar. Lin Feng then slightly closed his eyes and had the feeling of becoming one with the night. In his mind, a few silhouettes suddenly appeared. They were absolutely silent and were not giving off any presence. They couldn't escape from Lin Feng's vision when he was in fusion with the earth itself. Unless they managed to thoroughly hide their qi, Lin Feng could always detect them without being seen at all. Many strong cultivators had already arrived, besides, they remained in dark places and didn't show themselves. In the east, a streak of light signaled that dawn was approaching, gradually breaking through the darkness of the night. The dark blue sky was starting to reveal itself. At that moment, Lin Feng frowned. A brutal qi appeared and pressed against his body. How cold! A group of black coffins silently appeared in the sky. Their evil and demonic qi streaked through the sky as they moved. They were both silent and terrifying. These coffins were already flying low in the sky so the crowd could see them. People in the crowd felt extremely cold. 13 coffins. Many people in Celestial River could see the coffins. They were stupefied. Were these 13 coffins the representatives of the powerful evil cultivators? Behind the 13 coffins, many silhouettes were flickering and closely following the 13 coffins. All of these people's qi seemed extremely strong. These people belonged to the strongest spheres of influence. They were obviously not going to let the people in coffins, who had also managed to obtain the heavenly dragon cauldron, leave peacefully. Outside of Celestial River, on the yellow sand, many cultivators were already waiting. They looked cold and detached. These people were all extremely strong and intended to block the people with the coffins. Amongst these coffins, which streaked through the sky, there was one to the side which directly moved near Lin Feng. Lin Feng could thus feel even more distinctly the terrifying qi. Lin Feng was wondering what kind of person practiced such evil skills. Sirrr, sirrr. Silently, the coffins opened themselves. Two black chains appeared and immediately moved towards Lin Feng. They moved extremely quickly. Lin Feng was stupefied. When the chains appeared, Lin Feng had a strange feeling as if he was being sucked towards the chains, but he resisted. Ah! A strange sound emerged from the coffin. The black chains seemed to have found their target. They transformed into two dark lights which appeared in front of Lin Feng. Dodge! Lin Feng was in fusion with the earth. At that moment, Lin Feng was gracefully moving back and forth while carefully avoiding the attacks of the chains. The dark lights from the chains suddenly passed in front of him, so close that they almost crashed into his body. Even though he hadn't been touched by the dark lights, Lin Feng could still feel the evil qi that created the light penetrate into his body. Block! An evil voice emerged from the coffin. The black chains changed direction, but Lin Feng, high up in the air, even though he couldn't fully use his earth fusion, he released a huge amount of purple energy. His body suddenly rushed through the sky like a meteor. He wasn't retreating, in fact, he had just thrown himself towards the coffin. He was monstrously quick and the black chains failed to block his path. What amazing agility! Thought many people when they saw Lin Feng rushing through the sky. Lin Feng hadn't broken through to the Xian Qi layer, but he had been able to dodge the black chains consecutively, which already showed that he was extremely skilled. Besides, at the crucial moment, he hadn't tried to escape, on the contrary, he had chosen to attack. A light flashed and a spiritual weapon materialized in Lin Feng's hand. It was a long sword, it looked swift and fierce. Die! Shouted Lin Feng. His sword slashed through the sky towards the coffin. Cling cling cling. An endless amount of chains rushed forth from the coffin and collided with Lin Feng's sword qi. People's hearts were pounding. The light from the sword qi lasted for a moment and then the sword qi vanished without a trace. That cultivator in the coffin was much stronger than Lin Feng. It seemed like there was an endless ocean of black chains, and they were all now rushing towards Lin Feng at full speed. Besides, the sky seemed to turn black from the endless black chains that appeared. The other companions of the cultivator in the coffin were already in the distance. They thought that fighting against a cultivator of the Ling Qi layer and not being able to defeat him was a disgrace. They were furious. Lin Feng's face was filled with killing intent. He was still safe even though the opponent had immediately attacked him without warning. It was clear to Lin Feng that if the chains touched him, he would have probably died. They were trying to kill him for no obvious reason. How could Lin Feng not be furious? An incredible quantity of purple energy started filling the atmosphere. A myriad of purple snakes appeared and threw themselves towards the person in the coffin. These purple snakes looked like the opponent's black chains. It seemed like there was an endless amount of snakes to match the endless black chains. The myriad of purple snakes surrounded the black coffin and started to wrap around it. The crowd was astonished. The cultivator in the coffin had failed to catch Lin Feng, but Lin Feng had managed to capture him inside the coffin. Even though the crowd couldn't determine who would win or lose the battle, they at least had the proof that Lin Feng was extremely strong. The purple spirit. It's Lin Feng. People in the crowd raised their heads and looked at the person wearing a black chongpao. They were astonished. Almost everybody knew that Lin Feng was in Celestial River. Even though a certain time had passed since people had last seen him, his accomplishments and spirit made him very famous in Celestial River, in which he was at the core of all rumors. That person was a monstrous genius. His natural talent was terrifying. They hadn't thought that he would also be here at this moment. Had Lin Feng come to take back the ancient cauldron as well? Even though he was the first person to own the ancient cauldron, getting it back would be very difficult for him. A myriad of extremely strong cultivators were all staring at him. They were all there because they wanted the ancient cauldron for themselves. Die! Shouted Lin Feng furiously. Lin Feng originally wanted to remain anonymous and just wait for his prey like a fisherman, but he hadn't thought that this cultivator would attack him for no obvious reason, which had led to Lin Feng's identity being unveiled. The myriad of purple snakes which had tied up the coffin were shaking as they dragged it down from the sky. At the same time, the myriad of chains kept moving in an attempt to attack Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled coldly. He moved higher into the air. At the same time, a snowy white silhouette flashed through the air and immediately arrived beside the coffin. A punch containing an incredible quantity of ice chi crashed into the coffin. The coffin was completely frozen solid. As if that hadn't been enough, another silhouette appeared in front of the coffin in a flash. 2 fireballs emerged from the person's hands. It was Mr. Hua. Burn! His 2 hands shook and the fireballs from Mr. Hua's hands crashed into the coffin. In a flash, the coffin started burning. Just after the powerful ice attack, Mr. Hua carried out another powerful fire attack. That black coffin suddenly looked magnificent. The fire was burning on one side and the ice on the other side was reflecting the brilliance of the fire. Awe! A scream came from the coffin. The myriad of chains rushed back to the coffin and emitted loud sounds when they collided with the coffin. The coffin exploded and a silhouette appeared before the eyes of the crowd. The hideous silhouette of a man who looked like a skeleton appeared. He was hanging in the air thanks to the chains. He looked like a monster. However, he was severely suffering from the effects of the ice chi and fire chi corroding his body. Ice and fire had mixed together. Ice chi and fire chi together made a terrifyingly deadly power. "I will kill you!" shouted the monster evilly. He raised his head to look at Lin Feng, but then, immediately after, a cold light plummeted from the heavens and pierced through his head. The atmosphere became deadly silent. Amongst the cultivators inside the coffins, the first one had died. When the crowd saw that corpse, they sighed. Why had the strong cultivator in the coffin used his chains to attack Lin Feng? He hadn't managed to immobilize Lin Feng. In the end, he had lost his life because of it. At the moment just before he died, his heart was probably filled with regrets. He had provoked Lin Feng and the punishment had been his life. When the crowd saw that corpse, they sighed. Why had the strong cultivator in the coffin used his chains to attack Lin Feng? He hadn't managed to immobilize Lin Feng. In the end, he had lost his life because of it. At the moment just before he died, his heart was probably filled with regrets. He had provoked Lin Feng and the punishment had been his life. Besides, at the moment when Lin Feng used his sword, it seemed like he had become stronger once again and broken through to the 9th Ling Qi layer. On the path of cultivation, he was advancing at lightning speed. He is a real genius, he's really extraordinary, thought the crowd. Lin Feng was monstrous. Within a few days, he had broken through to the next Ling Qi layer. Besides, at the time when Lin Feng was still in the 8th Ling Qi layer, he was able to kill cultivators of the Xian Qi layer. So now that he became stronger, maybe that cultivator of the first Xian Qi layer would no longer be his equal. But at the same time, a myriad of cold and deadly energies were surrounding Lin Feng, which made his heart grow cold. A huge number of people wanted to kill Lin Feng. Concerning the 12 other coffins, they were all floating above the yellow sand. They were, as before, silent, which made the crowd feel horribly oppressed. The unknown was the most frightening thing in the world. Besides, the person whom Lin Feng had just killed was also terrifying. His body was entirely covered with black chains, which gave off the impression that he was a demon. He looked extremely evil. At that moment, many people started walking forwards and arrived in front of the people in their coffins. Each and every single one of them looked cold and detached. In that group of people, there was the leader of the Dream Pavilion, Aunt Yun, who had fought against Mr. Hua and Meng Qing. At that moment, she was behind a middle-aged man. That man had an even higher status than her. The 13 evil ectoplasms, you surprisingly rushed over to Celestial River, but this is Shuiyu. You shouldn't be here, said the middle-aged man while looking at the 12 coffins in a cold and detached manner. At the same time, he had immediately revealed their social status as the 13 evil ectoplasms. However, many people looked puzzled. They had never heard that name, the 13 evil ectoplasms. Some sharp whistling sound spread through the atmosphere. The coffins were moving towards that middle-aged man at the speed of light. But the man who had just talked looked calm and serene and remained motionless. Some silhouettes flickered behind him and bombarded the atmosphere with their punches. A monstrous exploding sound emerged in the atmosphere. The 12 coffins started to break. Besides, coming from the interior of the coffins, deathly pale white hands were slowly appearing, grabbing both sides of the coffin. A demonically evil chi had also enveloped the crowd. I know that you purposely like to make a mystery of simple things, shouted the middle-aged man. He started walking forward, which made the ground vibrate. In a flash, an extremely violent pure chi emerged from the ground. Yellow sand started rolling above the ground and was moving straight towards the coffins. Boom! The 12 coffins were completely crushed. At the same time, the 12 silhouettes appeared floating in the air above the ground. Their bodies were completely tied up by black chains. Just like spiders, they were using their black chains as legs to keep their bodies hovering above the ground. Besides, these 12 people had a common point. They were nothing but skin and bones, they looked like dried, mummified bodies. They looked terrifying. When they saw these monsters, many people with a lacking determination let dread invade their hearts. They also didn't feel like trying to steal the ancient cauldron anymore. These people were terrifying. A simple glance at them was enough to be terrified. But, as before, many people's eyes were glowing with greed. Some opportunities couldn't be missed, of course, they had to remain vigilant. However, the middle-aged man of the Dream Pavilion glanced at the crowd and his mouth looked like he was holding back a joke. He then said, sounding cold and detached, everybody else, screw off. You cannot rival with the people of the Tian Sha sect. Tian Sha sect? Some people were puzzled. They had never heard of the Tian Sha sect. However, those who had an advanced cultivation level and a broad knowledge of the continent started shaking when they heard that name. The Tian Sha sect. Surprisingly, they were people of the Tian Sha sect. How terrifying. When the middle-aged man saw that many people didn't understand what it meant, a mocking expression appeared in his eyes and he said coldly, "Oh my. You've never heard of the Tian Sha sect? You're just a bunch of tiny insects, such a group of nobodies, what an arrogant man." Lin Feng was exasperated when he heard the middle-aged man. Lin Feng had never heard of the Tian Sha sect either. He didn't know so many things concerning the continent of the 9 clouds. As if the middle-aged man had sensed Lin Feng's feelings, he looked at him and said, while smiling coldly, "You are Lin Feng, right? You dared to throw away the heavenly dragon cauldron instead of handing it over to us, the cosmic pavilion. How audacious. Since it's that way, get prepared to stay buried here forever." Stay buried here forever. When Lin Feng could distinctly feel the killing intent. His heart was filled with endless coldness again. Oh my God! The Dream Pavilion is a branch of the Cosmic Pavilion, shouted a person in the crowd in surprise. You people are from the Dragon Mountain Empire, said the person again whose pupils shrank while staring at the middle-aged man. Surprisingly, you have some knowledge, you are not as moronic as him, said the man mockingly. Obviously, he was making fun of Lin Feng. The Cosmic Pavilion is one of the largest powers of the Dragon Mountain Empire. We have branches everywhere. The Dream Pavilion is just one of them, that's all. You are just a bunch of nobodies compared to us. Even the Shueyu Imperial clan are just a bunch of nobodies to us. As far as the Tian Sha sect is concerned, they are one of the biggest sects of the Black Feather Empire. You can't afford to provoke them, therefore, everybody, get the hell out of here," said the middle-aged man, sounding insufferably arrogant. He gave the impression that he thought that he was a god when in the Shueyu country, considering everything and everyone beneath him. Many people could feel his arrogance and thought that it was natural. Amazingly, they were people from the Cosmic Pavilion from the Dragon Mountain Empire. In Shueyu, there were 13 powers, 4 of them were the empires while 9 of them were normal countries. The Dragon Mountain Empire was one of the 4 empires. However, Shueyu was just a small country, dependent on the Dragon Mountain Empire. The Cosmic Pavilion was one of the biggest spheres of influence in the empire. Everybody could imagine how strong they were. No wonder that the middle-aged man was so arrogant. Besides, the Black Feather Empire was also one of the 4 great empires. They were as strong as the Dragon Mountain Empire. The people in the coffin surprisingly were extremely strong cultivators from the Black Feather Empire and belonged to the Tian Sha sect. Many people were starting to move back. These cultivators were from 2 of the 4 empires. They were way too strong. Nobody could afford provoking them. "Weaklings," said a voice sounding cold and detached. Everybody was stupefied and then immediately looked at Lin Feng. "Weaklings, because of one sentence, you are all scared to death and start moving back. Are the sects of all the imperial countries extremely strong? Don't they have weak sects as well? Besides, even if their sects are extremely strong, so what? This is not within their sect, this is Shueyu. You people are scared of a sect which is in a faraway corner of the continent. What's the point in such weaklings being cultivators?" said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. The crowd was shocked. Lin Feng was right. They were in Shueyu, which is where their sects had power. If the people in front of them stole the treasure and left, who would be able to find it in the gigantic continent of 9 clouds? But they were all terrified. What kind of cultivators were they against? When Lin Feng thought about that, he looked at the middle-aged man of the Cosmic Pavilion. Lights were flashing in Lin Feng's eyes. That middle-aged man was so sly. He surprisingly was trying to scare everybody away so that he would be able to get the cauldron for himself. "Trash is trash," said the middle-aged man while smiling coldly. He stopped looking at the crowd and then looked at Lin Feng in a strange way. What a brilliant young man. He knew that the middle-aged man wanted to focus his energy on killing him, which was why he wanted to scare the crowd away without a fight. If all those interested in the ancient cauldron had left, it would have been very dangerous for Lin Feng. Lin Feng had a different line of thought. If the crowd left, would he still be able to grab the ancient cauldron in the chaos? Of course it would have been impossible. He was facing the Cosmic Pavilion and the Tian Sha sect. "Stop your arguing," said an abyssal voice at that moment. It amazingly came from one of the people from the 13 evil ectoplasms. "Today, all of you will die," said a somber voice. The 13 evil ectoplasms people started releasing their evil chi. In the air, the broken coffins turned into a grey chi which started to gather around the cultivators. It was extremely cold and sinister. The grey chi was getting more and more dense and was vast above the yellow sand. People were suddenly breathless. They saw that the grey chi which was condensing was gradually transforming into a silhouette, shaped like a person. When the 12 members of the 13 evil ectoplasms saw the silhouette slowly form itself above the ground, they respectfully said, "We welcome a king-class evil ectoplasm." When the 12 members of the 13 evil ectoplasms saw the silhouette slowly form itself above the ground, they respectfully said, "We welcome a king-class evil ectoplasm." A king-class evil ectoplasm is here, how is that possible? Thought the middle-aged man while frowning. The people of the Tian Sha sect were extremely strict. Besides, the 13 evil ectoplasms were all above the Xian Qi layer, they were extremely strong. The 13 evil ectoplasms were just stationed in Xueyu. Even though they weren't as strong as the other evil ectoplasms in Black Feather, they were still all at, or above, the second Xian Qi layer. As far as the king class was concerned, in Black Feather, in order to be an authentic king class, a cultivator had to be at the Tian Qi layer. At that moment, the 13 evil ectoplasms were kneeling down in front of their king. As expected, the corpse which had appeared was at the Tian Qi layer. He had monstrous power and could even destroy the whole country. The people of the Tian Sha sect are so quick. The middle-aged man said while narrowing his eyes. He was blankly staring at the corpse which had appeared, he was no longer feeling at ease. Besides, at that moment, the evil Qi finished transforming into a silhouette. Surprisingly, that silhouette was crawling on the ground. The person raised their head and immediately stood up, tall and erect. But that body looked like a gray illusion. Besides, it had 2 black holes instead of eyes. It looked terrifying. They are still convinced that we, people of the Tian Sha sect, accepted the meeting here because we were scared, haha. Laughed a deep and evil voice, it was coming from the gray silhouette. It looked like an illusion, but his voice sounded very clear and distinct, clearly affecting the other cultivators. We've come here to kill, said the king-class evil ectoplasm. The 12 other evil ectoplasms all stood up and an endless amount of chains started to fill the atmosphere. In a flash, many people who didn't have the time to dodge were tied up in chains. All these people immediately got pulled towards the king. An evil smile appeared on the king's mouth. His silhouette flickered and he immediately rushed forward. Ah! A blood-curdling scream spread through the atmosphere. The king-class ectoplasms had jumped on that person and sucked all of his pure qi as well as his blood from his body, until there was nothing left at all. In a flash, that person had turned into a pile of skin and bones. Besides, the image of the king was becoming more lifelike. Horrible shrieks were spreading through the atmosphere, all the people, who were tied up in chains, had their blood and pure qi sucked from them. Besides, the king's illusion was getting even more real. Some evil qi spread in the atmosphere. He is reincarnating into a new body. The middle-aged man's pupils shrank. He had suddenly understood. No wonder the king had made it to Celestial River so quickly. Stop him. We can't afford to let him regain his body. Right now, he's just a spirit, he's not very strong, but if we give him the opportunity to absorb more blood and pure qi, then he will regain a real body, become a real king class and have the strength at the Tian Qi layer. If that happens, everybody here will die, said the leader of the Cosmic Pavilion, which made people's hearts start pounding. If he regained a real body, he would be at the Tian Qi layer. If that happened, they would all definitely die. There wouldn't be a single one left. When Lin Feng heard that, he secretly smiled coldly. That guy had just told the entire crowd to screw off, and now that the king class was regaining a real body, he had suddenly drastically changed. He wanted everybody to stay and help stop the king. Why wasn't he going himself? Back, said Lin Feng. He immediately moved back. If the king-class evil ectoplasm had a chance of regaining his strength, Lin Feng preferred leaving. Losing his life because of the heavenly dragon cauldron was really not worth it. The 12 evil ectoplasms were attacking at the same time. It seemed like their chains were endless, and that their power was inexhaustible. People were unceasingly being tied up in chains, then dragged towards the king, and then had their pure qi and blood were sucked from their body. Don't think that you can run away. If the king regains a real body as well as his strength of the Tian Qi layer, do you think that you will be able to run away? Now, the only solution is to kill the 12 remaining from the 13 evil ectoplasms and then immobilize the king. This is the only way for us not to die and even get the heavenly dragon cauldron," shouted the middle-aged man from the cosmic pavilion loudly. His voice was violently resonating in people's minds. It also seemed like he was, at that moment, realizing that the crowd was adopting a wait-and-see attitude. If he didn't attack first, there would probably be nobody who would dare to take the initiative. "Thousand-fist shadows!" shouted the man. His body moved swiftly and violently bombarded the atmosphere with his fist, which made the entire atmosphere vibrate. A golden pure chi transformed into a gigantic hand and rushed through the air towards the evil ectoplasms. Boom! The pure chi was striking against the chains, making them vibrate violently and move back. One of the evil ectoplasms, who was too weak, surprisingly couldn't stand the power from the pure chi and his body was sent flying backwards. The middle-aged man of the cosmic pavilion had broken through to the fifth Xian Qi layer. He was extremely strong. The cosmic pavilion had also dispatched some strong cultivators for the heavenly dragon cauldron. Die! An incredibly sharp energy emerged. A long spear, which looked like a venomous dragon, rushed forwards. It immediately moved towards the evil ectoplasm's chest who had been knocked back. Another one of them had just died. When the crowd saw that move, the crowd suddenly felt less scared. Indeed, these evil ectoplasms weren't that strong at all. The evil ectoplasms were only in a small group. If the large group of cultivators all attacked together, how could these evil ectoplasms overpower them? As far as the king was concerned, if they prevented him from absorbing more pure chi and blood, it wouldn't be easy for him to become stronger by himself. Kill them. Then we will be able to take back the heavenly dragon cauldron. These people are only at the Xian Qi layer like us, why are you scared? Shouted the cultivator who had just thrown the spear. He looked majestic and his voice was filled with power. Yes, kill them. There are only 11 evil ectoplasms left, that's all. The king cannot do anything, let's kill them and take back the heavenly dragon cauldron. Said another powerful voice which made people's hearts beat faster. They were starting to feel a rush of fighting spirit. Kill them. Get the ancient cauldron. Kill them, if the king becomes stronger, he will kill us all even though we are so many people. Many people were saying various things as if they were trying to regain their motivation and speaking like the heavenly dragon cauldron was about to be theirs. You all want to die. Said the king-class evil ectoplasm. When he saw that these people wanted to kill him, he released some cold and evil chi. His body shook and he grabbed 2 evil ectoplasms. 2 horrible shrieks spread through the air and in a flash, the 2 evil ectoplasms fell dead onto the ground. When the other evil ectoplasms saw that, their eyes narrowed. Expressions of terror appeared on their faces. The king-class evil ectoplasm was planning on absorbing their blood and chi. You, give me your lives. Said the king-class evil ectoplasm. His silhouette transformed into a gray light and streaked through the air towards the evil ectoplasms. All of them were already tied by their own chains, and the chains obeyed the king-class. At that moment, the crowd was attacking and was about to reach them. The king-class evil ectoplasm jumped high into the air. It was amazing, in a flash, the king was high in the sky. In the atmosphere, the evil ectoplasms were tied up by their own chains. An incredible quantity of pure chi and blood was flowing along these chains and entering the king's body. The king's body looked even more real. His face looked like he was intoxicated with happiness. He had sucked up the pure chi and blood of 10 cultivators of the Xian Qi layer. He was demonic. When the crowd saw that evil monster in the air, their hearts were pounding. Was the king-class evil ectoplasm really going to obtain a real body? Would they all die? Shouted the king furiously. The infinity of chains were swinging in the atmosphere. The 13 evil ectoplasms had all died. Only the king-class remained, looking majestic in the sky. You will all die, I will suck up all your blood and chi. Said the king while looking down at the people on the ground. His mouth looked hideous and evil. How strong, the king-class evil ectoplasm will become real. When the king appears, we will all die. Everybody was panic-stricken. Lin Feng was quickly moving back. He had anticipated such incidents occurring. Not only had the Cosmic Pavilion appeared but the Tian Sha sect of the Black Feather Empire. Even the king-class evil ectoplasm had appeared. Lin Feng had never heard about these two spheres of influence from these two different empires. However, at the moment when Lin Feng was leaving, a sharp chi emerged. Lin Feng turned around and saw a person who was preventing him from leaving. Lin Feng was also dumbstruck. That person was the strong cultivator who, a moment ago, had killed the evil ectoplasm with his spear, the one who had been trying to convince everybody to fight against the king class. Lin Feng was fixedly staring at his interlocutor. Lin Feng's eyes were filled with displeasure. Lin Feng was fixedly staring at his interlocutor. Lin Feng's eyes were filled with displeasure. That man had killed an evil ectoplasm with a spear, motivated the crowd to fight against the king, but he was already there and not fighting, besides, he was even preventing him from leaving. Lin Feng glanced around him and his heart twitched for a second. At that moment, there wasn't only the spear cultivator standing around Lin Feng but 7 others as well. They were all wearing black clothes and all had spears in their hands. Even though they weren't releasing any chi, their silence and coldness were piercing to the bones, which made Lin Feng sense that these 8 people were all extremely strong cultivators. Let him go. At that moment, a faint yet firm discernible voice spread through the air. Immediately after, the one who were blocking Lin Feng's way looked at Lin Feng in a respectful way and opened the way, letting Lin Feng leave. Lin Feng stared straight into the first person's eyes, then he looked toward Celestial River. On the city gate, there was a person wearing a black chong pao, his body and face was completely covered. He looked mystical and mysterious. At that moment, the person who spoke was calmly leaning against the city wall and lowered his head, almost looking like he was closing his eyes, as if what was happening at that moment had nothing to do with him. By carefully observing that man in a black chong pao, Lin Feng realized that the situation was much more complex than he initially believed. Maybe that king class was an insect to him. Everyone had come for the cauldron, but there was a venomous snake staring at everyone like they were prey. Of course, he was also looking for the heavenly dragon cauldron. Lin Feng continued walking on the periphery, but didn't hurry to leave. He was standing on the yellow sand, watching the people fighting. At that moment, they only saw the king-class body fly through the air and rush towards a small group. Immediately, the small group of cultivators died after having their chi and blood absorbed. We must kill him. If he regains his body, it will be very dangerous, whereas right now we are dealing with his spirit and nothing more. I am sure that if we attack him together, we will definitely kill him. Shouted the middle-aged man of the Cosmic Pavilion when he noticed that the crowd was becoming distracted and easy targets. However, when he finished talking, he saw a pair of piercingly cold eyes looking at him. They were piercing him to the bones, making his heartbeat accelerate. Die! Shouted the king-class evil ectoplasm furiously. An endless number of chains started moving towards him, making his heart pound brutally. He jumped and a brutal fist moved towards the chain. The pure chi of the fist attack emitted rumbling noises in the atmosphere. However, at that moment, many chains silently appeared behind him. In a flash, he turned his head around and his facial expression drastically changed. He couldn't avoid them anymore, it was too late. These chains were controlled by the king's soul. They were moving closer and closer to him, when suddenly, both his hands were tied up by the chains. I don't want to die, attack him together. The middle-aged man furiously shouted, but at that moment, the crowd was dumbstruck. They only saw an evil smile appear on the king's face, before he then threw himself forwards like a predator. You've become my dinner. The king-class evil ectoplasm evilly said. He landed on the middle-aged man's body and sucked out his pure chi and blood. Thousand illusion disintegration. The middle-aged man furiously shouted. A deadly strength invaded the atmosphere. The king-class evil ectoplasm suddenly looked surprised and was blown backwards. Boom! A multitude of chains were broken. At the same time, the middle-aged man's body also disappeared like dust in the wind. The king was startled. His chi was fluctuating, which meant that he had been injured. Thousand illusion disintegration. What a bastard! Arg! The king groaned and continued to move while sucking out the chi and blood from the people he encountered. At that moment, there weren't that many strong cultivators left. In a flash, there were only a few dozen people left. Besides, the king's chi was getting more and more powerful. Run away! Run away! The crowd only had one thought. Everyone started trying to escape in every direction. They didn't want the heavenly dragon cauldron anymore. At that moment, a few silhouettes were running towards Lin Feng. However, the cultivator who blocked Lin Feng's escape a moment ago, the one with the spear, was still standing there, as motionless as a mountain, as steady as a rock. He looked cold and detached, and his eyes looked sharp. Open the way! Shouted a man while running away like a madman. The spear in the cultivator's hand shook and in a flash, some black pure chi appeared and transformed into a long dragon which immediately shot towards the man who was trying to run away. In an instant, that cultivator of the Xian Qi layer had died. How strong! That spear is monstrously powerful. He is at least as strong as Mr. Qi, thought Lin Feng, whose heart stopped for a second. These 8 people were all at least at the 4th Xian Qi layer. They were incredibly powerful. Behind, 2 people, who were trying to escape, were also approaching the cultivator with the spear. He looked puzzled and then his body slowly became rigid. These 2 people were from the Cosmic Pavilion. Lin Feng knew the girl. On that day, when the Ant Yun had tried to get the ancient cauldron from Lin Feng, that person was there as well. It was Lan Jiao. Many people of the Cosmic Pavilion had come thinking that they would definitely get the ancient cauldron. Nonetheless, almost all of them had died in Celestial River. Those who want to escape, die. Said the cultivator with the spear sounding cold and detached. He took a huge step forwards. His spear was unceasingly gathering deadly energy. A terrifying pure black chi emerged in the atmosphere. He was about to throw his spear. Stop, said a voice coming from the sky, which surprised the man with the spear. Immediately after, a silhouette fell from the sky, landing by Lan Jiao's side. That person was precisely Lin Feng. The man with the spear was surprised, and had an extremely cold expression on his face. You cannot kill her. Lin Feng said, sounding indifferent. The man silently put down his spear and immediately turned to Ant Yun, who was also running away. The man was surprisingly listening to Lin Feng and letting Lan Jiao live. Lin Feng took a deep breath. Before that, Lan Jiao had tried to warn him a few times. Lin Feng appreciated the help she gave him in the past. If he could save her, he wouldn't hesitate. Save me, said Ant Yun when she saw the cultivator with the spear was moving towards her. She was looking at Lin Feng with hope in her eyes. Lin Feng, looking cold and detached, looked at Ant Yun and said expressionlessly, last time, you wanted to kill me, and now you want me to save you? Ant Yun's heart was pounding. Her heart was filled with regret. In her thoughts, there was only one thought, one careless move and the whole game is lost. She perfectly knew what kind of temperament Lin Feng had. He was stubborn and determined. Why had she tried to steal the cauldron from Lin Feng? She should have thought about the results. She initially just didn't care about gaining Lin Feng's wrath. All she thought was that she could rely on her strength to obtain the cauldron, and that she could kill Lin Feng at any time. However, in life, everything can quickly change. She hadn't managed to kill Lin Feng when she had had the opportunity and at this moment, because of that, she would lose her own life. She was going to die because of one wrong move. The long spear was releasing an incredible deadly energy. Aunt Yun's face was filled with regret and hatred. She closed her eyes and did not feel like resisting. Even if she could resist for a short period of time, the result would be the same. Her death was already sealed. She could get killed here or by the king-class evil ectoplasm. She had no way out. Besides, getting killed by a spear was much better than dying after having qi and blood sucked from the body. Aunt Yun! Shouted Lan Xiao while her eyes were filling with tears. Lin Feng was preventing her from moving to help. She couldn't move from that spot. Suddenly an unfathomable voice emerged in the air. Lin Feng dragged Lan Xiao backwards. At that moment, he saw many people getting killed either by the king-class evil ectoplasm or by the spears from the cultivators blocking people's retreat. At that moment, apart from Lin Feng, his friends, and the 8 cultivators with spears, everyone had died. Of course, there was also the mysterious person leaning against the city wall. Little brat, you are really audacious. The king-class evil ectoplasm said while evilly staring at Lin Feng, which made a cold light flash through Lin Feng's eyes. Haven't you noticed that they are waiting for you? Lin Feng said while pointing at the 8 cultivators in black clothes. Lin Feng sounded cold and detached. He hadn't left because he had realized that these 8 people as well as the person leaning against the city wall had come to kill the king-class evil ectoplasm. They had prepared everything earlier. Perhaps it was all part of their plan. The king-class evil ectoplasm wasn't stupid. He had also noticed these things. He then evilly stared at the 8 cultivators with the spears and said coldly, "You are quite strong, but a moment ago, I killed some people who were much stronger than you. How come you think that you can be so audacious?" "Because of me," said a deep voice interrupting. The mysterious person leaning against the city wall slowly started moving towards them. He still hadn't raised his head and was still looking at the ground. In a flash, he had crossed 100 meters and arrived in front of the king-class evil ectoplasm. "This is Xueyu. Since the evil cultivators of the Tian Sha sect have come here, there is no need for you to leave anymore," said a cold voice coming from one cultivator in a black Chang Pao. Immediately after that person raised his head, a bright and resplendent light emerged and flashed. It was dazzling to the eyes. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.